The Master still runs at the head of the pack, but lately Mike Eddy has had to turn and face the Lions, nipping at his heels. Young drivers who are still reaching for the top rung of the ASA ladder. And here at Heartland Park, Topeka, anything can happen, and often does. Ask Jay Sauter. He'll tell you. The best short track drivers in the land, alongside some of racing's biggest stars, are set to go road racing one more time. America's premier short track racing series visits the 1.8-mile road course at Heartland Park, Topeka, Kansas. And if it weren't for a healthy breeze blowing through the wheat fields here, it would be a scorcher. It is very, very hot here, and the drivers will be suffering from weather conditions unlike they have seen throughout this entire 1995 season. Hello again, everybody. I'm Brian Drever, along with my good friend Rob Albright, a former race car driver, who will be working this broadcast with me here today. And we are at the midpoint of the 1995 season, just about halftime here, you might say. Any thoughts so far for the first half, Rob?
Yeah, it is as close as these guys get to a halftime break. They've had 3 weeks off, time to check all the parts and pieces and get ready to run to the finish of the 1995 season. You'd have thought everything would have been right, but 5 drivers suffered blown engines in practice this weekend.
We are also involved in one of the most interesting points battles hit halfway point here in this season. And Mike Eddy's still out in front, but there is a lot of competition behind him.
Wow, and no sophomore slump whatsoever for Brian Refner. His performance has been fantastic this season, just 60 out of the points lead, and in his second season in the hunt for a championship. A knot of drivers, 6th through 10th. 10th is Joe Knott.
Now, this is the second and final road race of the season, and we're bound to see some very interesting competition here this weekend, but it is the last time that we'll see them turning left and right.
And I think you would say that the favorite would probably be maybe Scott Hansen or Darrell Waltrip, because 5 of 6 road races have been won by Jerry Gunderman prepared automobiles. However, based on yesterday's qualifying race, I'm going to go out and say that my pick is Jay Sauter. Boy, that #1 Pontiac was fast.
Well, I'd also have to add that even by his own admission, Mike Eddy, more or less against his own wishes, saying, I still don't like this road racing, but believe it or not, folks, he's getting good at it. Well, down at the front of the starting grid, the third member of our broadcast team is standing by with the contenders up front. Here's Ralph Shaheen.
This is it, the Bluebird, the Johnsonville-backed entry of Bob Seneca, car number 84. It has sat on the pole more times than any other machine in ASA racing in 1995. It is the 3rd time. It will start from the front, and Bob Seneca won his qualifying race yesterday. Second fastest and second in his qualifying race, the 1994 ASA champ. Nice to have you back, Butch Miller. How come you adjust to this car so quick? Is it the car that ASA runs, or is it you as a driver, the team? What is it?
Well, you know, I wish I could tell you what it is, but I actually can't, because this is the exact same car that we ran 90% of the races with last year. The only difference is now it says Ray Bestis, Ford Credit, red carpet lease on the side.
Let's move now to the 4th member of our broadcasting crew, Sandy Hang.
Well, I'm here with Brian Refner, second in points and a serious contender for the championship. Today, he is doing everything to make sure heat is not a bad factor in the race. He's made some modifications to the car. This lip is now 1 inch instead of a ½ inch to take in more air. One duct goes to the back, the other to cool the front. Also, you don't see this very often. This ice chest, below here there is copper tubing. Air runs through the copper tubing to keep Brian cool. There are also changes that you will find on the nose of the car that you haven't seen before this year. ASA is allowing drivers to cut an extra vent out of the fiberglass. More air to keep the car cool. Also, this vent, notice it's indented. If grass gets caught here, air can still get up here. Brian Refner's been doing everything to make sure that this race goes in his favor. Brian, this could be a real opportunity for you to close the gap on points. What is your strategy for this?
Well, our strategy on this race is to be there at the end. You know, we've done everything we could to make sure this car stays cool, and I'm refreshed at the end of the race, you know, and it's track position is going to mean a lot at the end of the race here. So if we can stay up in the hunt and stay there all day and keep myself cool and on my toes, you know, we'll be strong at the end, and that's what's going to be important at this race. And that points battle, if we can tighten it up, that'll be all the better.
Okay, that's Brian Refner. Let's go now to Ralph Shaheen to start the race.
Well, thank you, Sandy. We're down here with Susie Coleman, who is the general manager of the Easy Shops here. How about if you get us underway here at Heartland Park today?
Drivers, start your engines.
"41 race cars at 500 horsepower apiece. Over 20,000 ponies are up and running. And we'll be back with the Heartland Park Topeka Road Race. The 1995 AC-Delco Challenge Series on TNN is brought to you in part by your GM Goodwrench service dealer. We want your business. By Win Oil Company, makers of quality automotive car care products. Remember, when it's wins, it works. By Goodyear, #1 in racing, #1 in tires. And by more than 1,000 AutoZone stores across America. AutoZone, the best parts in auto parts. The Mello Yello 300 is about to get underway here at Heartland Park, Topeka, Kansas. A scorching hot day, as we mentioned at the top of the show. The fans will be having difficulties out there, of course, and many of them are seeking shade as best they can. And the drivers, well, we have already seen that some of them are using rather innovative ways to try to stay cool. Let's take a look at the starting grid for this Mello Yello 300.
Earning his third pole position of the season, Bob Seneca in the Johnsonville Foods Lane Automotive Ford Thunderbird, and fellow Blue Oval driver Butch Miller, the 1994 ASA champion in the Ray Bestis Brakes Liberty machine.
Scott Hansen, the only two-time road race winner in the American Speed Association, alongside Jay Sauter, who has got a rocket ship of a race car out there today.
Inside row 3, the super soft Brian Refner in the structural transport Ford, and Tony Raines coming on strong in the Baker Enterprises Cleanburn Pontiac.
Glenn Allen Jr. always a contender here. It remains to be seen what he's going to do in his Pontiac. And Leighton Reese, the king of the road. Lightning Leighton, he'll be a contender.
Terry Labonte will debut a Hendrick Motorsports ASA car, and that's the Coca-Cola Hendrick Chevrolet. Mike Eddy will start alongside 7-time ASA champ in the GM Goodwrench Service HRE Pontiac.
The current rookie points leader, Rick Beebe, alongside the original rookie points leader, J.D. Summers, who has dropped back in the point standings for the rookies.
7th row, Mike Miller and Tony Roper, who both had good runs in their qualifying races yesterday.
And alongside last year's winner, DW, is Dr. Yale Conley of West Virginia. Darrell Waltrip winning this race a year ago.
The 9th row, John Cadman, the winner of ASA's first road race up in Canada, and Bill Baird, the guy who's, we saw you had an opportunity to do something very special with him this morning.
More on that later. Back on row number 10, Gary Sanaman has been fighting gremlins this weekend. He'll start alongside Brandon Sperling in an unfamiliar spot way back in row number 10.
In the 11th row, Darren Law, a driving school instructor, and Jeff Neal in his racing Pontiac.
Brad Loney has been ill. In fact, has lost nearly 20 pounds since we saw him in Cedar Rapids. Strep throat problems. Dave Sensible, last year's rookie champion, also not qualifying well, but he'll be moving up.
25th and 26th positions, Randy Ruhlman in his third ASA start, and ASA racing veteran Tom Jones, the zero hero in the Felpro Pontiac.
Steve Shive and Ted Smokestad, a couple of young drivers who have yet to taste real success this year. Perhaps today will be their day.
Dennis Lampman, ASA veteran, along with Chuck Hemmingson, car number 95. I think this is just his second ASA start.
And Rick Miller alongside Eddie Sharp. Two more young drivers. Rick Miller, a rookie contender, as is Eddie Sharp. So here's a couple of guys looking to move up.
17th row, road racing veteran Bobby Archer, along with another ASA rookie challenger, Pat Bordeaux, in car number 44.
Ray Skillman and Joe Knott back on row number 18. Also, Joe Knott and his crew chief Chris have been chasing problems this weekend.
Pair of real veterans occupy row 19, Harold Fair and Kent Stauffer in a Pontiac and a Ford, respectively.
Working our way back through a very large field. The 07 car, Todd Forbes. Cindy Peterson, the only female driver, doing a good job here and getting in the field.
Row 21, yes, Pat Patterson, the same one that you've seen on television, making his first ASA start, along with the racing school principal, David Anspaugh.
And finally, John Freeman and Scott Lagacy, who will drive Ken Schrader's 52K machine. Schrader just not up to it physically this weekend in the job of driving, and goes to Scott Lagacy. We're getting ready to go green here at Heartland Park, Topeka. They're heading down the drag strip, and there is the green flag. Pole sitter Bob Seneca, for the third time this year, tries to launch out to an early lead, as he did at Brainerd, but he'll get a lot of challenge from the cars alongside. He gets into turn number 1 first, and it's a whole herd thundering up behind him.
Until 1995, Brian, most people thought the Fords with a little bit of a horsepower advantage were the cars to beat on the road courses, and they have been. But Jay Sauter at Brainerd was so strong before having a transmission problem, and he was the class of the field in his qualifying race yesterday. Scott Hansen, who's already won a couple of times on the road courses, has quickly come to second position. Butch Miller has dropped to fourth, and it looks like Sauter has already moved up to the third spot.
Well, watch Jay Sauter start to use the horsepower advantage that he showed in qualifying as he comes out of the third turn. Apparently, not only the power of the engine, but the gear selection that he has chosen here has allowed him to get a good jump off the turn, and then he's able to extend that lead towards the end of the straightaway. But now Bob Seneca still leads with Scott Hansen, who is long overdue for a win here this year.
Under the bridge now coming through turn number 10, and Darrell Waltrip a little bit off track there, and he wasn't especially impressive yesterday in his qualifying race. Now, this is another Gunderman-built race car. We know it's a strong machine, but you know, it gets tougher and tougher as these ASA regulars get more road racing experience to compete with him on a favorable basis.
And that long telephoto shot from turn number 1 gives you an idea of just how hot it is as 3 cars are trying to extend their lead, run away from the field, led by Bob Seneca, the pole sitter. Very fast, very competent, very capable, and of course the winningest driver in the history of the American Speed Association.
Jay Sauter now has moved that Welsh company's first chiropractic Pontiac into second position, but not for long as Hansen goes right back by in turn number 3, I believe it is.
Well, apparently the combination of those 2 turns, Sauter had the first one figured out, but the second one came back and bit him. Hansen goes back into second place, but Jay Sauter is going to continue trying to get out in front, and if he gets to the front, he can sure pull away. Scott Hansen and Jay Sauter waging battle behind Bob Seneca. We're going to go for the first of our pit reports down to Ralph Shaheen on pit road. He's going to be busy today.
That's Scott Lagasse you're watching right there, and it was supposed to be Kenny Schrader, as we talked about on race day this morning. How come you're not driving?
Shoulder just doesn't feel that good. You know, next week's a pretty big week for us, and I just, you know, we had the opportunity to put Scott in the car, so we're going to rest up and let Scott run.
Now, he got a late start out on the racetrack. What happened to his car?
Well, we had trouble. We pushed the talk button, and you know, we just got to get a yellow to get him caught back up. But, yeah, we put him behind right at the start, but it's a long race.
Of course, he was talking about the Brickyard 400 next weekend, a big weekend for Kenny Schrader.
We'd love to see Kenny Schrader in this race, as Darren Law's car number 55 has been the first machine to head down pit road. Now as Scott Lagasse hustles to catch up, we're back up front with Bob Seneca, and again it's Jay Sauter moving into second position, getting past Scott Hansen. We noticed yesterday, Brian, when those drivers climbed out of those super trucks after the tailgate 175, a lot of them were absolutely exhausted. Today is a 300-kilometer race, so physical conditioning is really going to be of the utmost importance. And I'd love to see Kenny Schrader in this race, but I think it's probably wise for him to sit it out.
There's the 55 car of Darren Law in the pits with some front-end damage. Off comes the hood. The crew going in there to take a look at what might be damaged beyond the obvious and visible to us. So the first casualty of the Mello Yellow 300 becomes the number 55 car of driving instructor Darren Law, the Leo Motorsports Chevrolet.
And back onto the main stretch out of turn number 10 and down that long heat. Look at that, the heat that you can see on your screen right there, and it is hot, folks. And we were up on the roof a little bit ago, and even with a breeze, the sweat was pouring off somewhere in the mid-90s today. And the only advantage we got over yesterday is there is a little bit of intermittent cloud cover.
A 60-lap Super Truck race, a 104-lap American Speed Association AC-Delco Challenge race, and this will be indeed a challenge for the stamina of some of the drivers. Here's a look at Heartland Park, Topeka from overhead, and they are in the backstretch part of the race course right now. 10 turns, Rob Albright.
And one thing the drivers do like, 7 out of the 10 are left-hand turns, and normally that's what they're doing all the time, is turning left.
A couple of spots on the course that have given drivers trouble. You can see the area 3, 4, 5. Between 5 and 6 is what they call the Camel Hump, and those have been some incident situations there. Also, turn 9, the left-hander leading to the right onto the straightaway, has been a problem. That's where they are right now.
And look at Jay Sauter challenging Bob Seneca for that lead. Yes, we did have 2 drivers involved in very serious incidents in the backside of the course yesterday. Doug Mayer, a former kart racing champion, was on hand, and during practice he crashed very hard, was airlifted out of here. I guess he is going to be okay, but a broken collarbone, some cracked ribs, a broken arm. Very fortunate that it's going to be a road to recovery for Doug Mayer. And then in the Super Truck race, driver Kerry Teague had a very horrible looking crash, And we understand it was just a situation of his bell being rung, knocked him out momentarily. They did lift him out of here as well, cut the top off the race car, but he was back at the track before the end of the day yesterday.
He sure hit hard right on the driver's side against one of those concrete barriers. A very unusual looking crash the way it developed. Well, in any case, we won't be able to see that, but we will see Bob Seneca and Jay Sauter continuing to wage war. There's Brian Refner in the number 5 car. Not only was he a runner-up rookie contender last year and has been very consistent throughout this season, he is now a contender in the overall points battle. He is being challenged up from behind by Tony Raines in the number 87 Baker Enterprises Cleanburn Pontiac. Tony with a good run at Brainerd on the road course. We'll see how he's going to do here today.
And you know, it's kind of interesting how the top 7 or 8 are still right together on the racetrack. I thought that probably Seneca, Hansen, and Sauter would separate themselves from the remainder of the field. They have not done that. And where most ASA races, I think, are flat-out sprints, whether they're 200, 300, 400 laps, don't be surprised if some of these drivers are maybe pacing themselves a bit, Brian, in the early going, physically as well as giving their race cars, you know, the benefit of the doubt and not overworking them. And we've got a full course yellow already as it's being waved here on the main stretch.
Jay Sauter not really giving Bob Seneca much ability to pace himself. We'll try to get to the bottom of what the full course yellow is about. We'd also like to tell you, and we're very disappointed about this, that we had expected to bring you 5 in-car cameras during our broadcast here today of the American Speed Association AC-Delco Challenge Series Mello Yello 300 from Heartland Park. Helicopter difficulties. Literally the 10-cent part in the helicopter has prevented the helicopter from rising above the track. That is where the signal from all the in-car cameras is transmitted. As we see Pat Bordeaux, the reason for the caution flag. Pat has parked the race car out on the track. So we will not be able to bring you in-car cameras here today unless by some last-minute miracle we're able to get a replacement helicopter up and flying. We'll be back here to Heartland Park, Topeka in just a few minutes. We're under a full course caution. The American Speed Association returns in a moment. More racing. We'll see you then. Motorhome facilities for Group 5 sports and the AC-Delco Challenge Series are provided by Winnebago Industries. For more information about Winnebago, call them up at 1-800-643-4892. That's Winnebago Industries.
Again, we remain under full course caution. It was Pat Bordeaux, the rookie driver from Saginaw, Michigan, and the BASF Finish Master Chevrolet who came to a stop. This is a great break for Scott Lagasse, who now will move the Ken Schrader machine around to the rear of the field. And he has, in fact, elected to bring car number 52, the AC-Delco Monte Carlo, onto pit road. And that may not be a bad idea, Brian.
Well, at this point, with the full course caution out there and the car circulating slowly, of course, this is a 1.8-mile road course. If he should be able to get in, make some minor repair, modification, get back out there, he'll be able to get right back up to the tail end of the field before they throw the green. We also have information from the Know-It-All brothers, our statisticians, scorers, and general eyes in the sky, that the number 17 car of Darrell Waltrip may be leaking fluid, so we'll keep an eye on that. Difficult to pass on this race course, Rob, and we see a lot of single file going on out there so far.
Yeah, we do, and I think we will see quite a bit of that. Timing on pit stops, that strategy will really have an impact on the outcome of this race. You can't afford any problems on pit road if you expect to win. We noticed yesterday Glenn Allen Jr. was significantly faster than a couple of the guys in front of him, but he didn't have the straightaway speed and found it hard to pass the corners. There he is. That was the purple and white number 15. There was Mike Eddy in 88. Some of the other drivers coming through the screen, that was Mike Miller in the 70 machine of John Cadman, who won our first road race up in Cayuga several years ago.
So even when they're racing, they look a lot like this, stretched in single file. The track here at Heartland Park is not particularly wide, and even if it were, there's really only one good line through most of the turns here. Horsepower being what it is, well, some guys are going to have a little bit more power and be able to outrun the other guy down the drag strip into turn number 1. We saw that happening a little bit yesterday, not only in the qualifying races, in the Super Truck event as well. Let's go down to Ralph Shaheen during this pause in the action. He's got a guest down there.
Well, that would be Timmy Cahuth, who is the crew chief normally for Ken Schrader, today for Scott Lagasse. What's up with the car, Timmy? Well, looks like he's talking to Scott. We'll give him half a second. He'll get with us here just... Okay, what's up with the car?
We had a little radio problem and tried to get it in right there before the start, and we got put back a little bit, but we're okay now. I put a different radio in.
Hey, now you told me before the start of this race that you're giving America some excitement today. You kicked Schrader out of the car and you put Lagasse in.
We got Lagasse in there, so hopefully he'll do us a good job. Pretty sure he will.
By the way, that was a quote, folks.
Scott Lagasse is an excellent road racer. That's where he's made his name in automobile racing. Of course, he made one particular driver a little unhappy that we saw in the tease to the show today. Jay Sauter was leading this race last year in the last couple of laps. when Legacy bumped him in the back end. Scott felt very badly after that happened. Harold Fair in that car number 81, the Pontiac, has brought that machine on pit road, and that's not a good sign. The hood is up. They're working on the right front corner, and I would guess that maybe they're doing something with the suspension rather than it being an engine problem.
During the qualifying race yesterday, Harold Fair had an off-road excursion, and those guys were scrambling quite a bit. The crew of the number 81 Build-A-Molt Dana Pontiac. So these guys are starting off the way they ended yesterday, which is working on the race car out there. During a caution right now, we also would expect to get back underway very shortly. That would not bode well for Harold Fair and the crew of the number 81 machine.
As we prepare to go back to green, we'd like to say hi to a couple of folks. Chris Skirshovic, who is very ill. He's a good friend and former engine builder for Tony Roper's crew chief. Roper, who had a great run in his qualifying race yesterday. And also our best wishes and prayers to Bo Gray, who is on our crew. He lost his mom to an illness this week, and what a trooper he is, just a couple of days after losing mom, to come out here and do his duties for Group 5 in this broadcast today. So, Bo, our prayers are with you also.
Stock Car Racing's only female pit reporter, Sandy Hang, is down in the Harold Fair pit. Sandy?
We're down here with Harold Fair. Harold, looks like your car is overheating. What can you do to fix it at this point?
Well, they said the hose came off. I don't know exactly what they mean, but they're trying to get it fixed right now so we can get back out. The car's working real well, and we just hope we can get back out there and not lose too much time.
Tough break here for Harold Fair.
Well, was I wrong on that one? I said not an engine problem. That's exactly what it was.
As we get ready to go back green, and there is the green flag. Bob Seneca, the pole sitter, still out in front. Jay Sauter, who started outside row number 2, moved into 3rd and then 2nd place. Then it's Scott Hansen, and now look, an inside move there by Brian Refner on the restart. He made an inside move there on Butch Miller and got by.
What a move by Brian Refner, and he's strong every place he goes. It doesn't matter if it's a 3rd mile oval like at Columbus, Ohio, or a 3-mile road. Of course, he surprised us all at Brainerd. Now, got to be a little careful because he scooted off the racetrack there. He had enough breathing room between himself and Butch Miller to hang on to the position. But the real battle, Brian, is for that top spot all of a sudden.
There's Bob Seneca and Jay Sauter. You can see right on the roof of the car some of those in-car cameras that we have mounted there. Unfortunately, as we mentioned before, the helicopter that would allow the signal from the car to be brought to us is not flying. So those in-car cameras are just for decoration here at this point.
It's very important for Jay Sauter to run well every time out. He's running a limited schedule for Scott Lefebvre and this Welsh company's Metalcraft machine. Wants to go full-time ASA campaigning again in 1996. And with the good runs that he's had when he has been at the racetrack, that's got to be real encouragement for that team for 1996.
Now, we did not see Jay Sauter and Bob Seneca in the same race yesterday. They're both driving, of course, Ford Thunderbirds. They've got the big horsepower. But I'll tell you what, if Jay Sauter gets out front, look out, because he has really been fast here and seems to be able to just pull away from almost anyone at will on the straightaway. Almost anyone except perhaps for another Ford Thunderbird, and that of Bob Seneca. Bob has also been very fast.
There's another very important element here that comes into play besides horsepower, and that's gearing, as Tom Jones and Dennis Lampman have brought their machines, the Felpro Pontiac of Tom Jones and Lampman's machine, car number 9, the Barricade Flasher Ford, both on pit road and very slowly down the pit road.
Well, we'll have to see what these two drivers are experiencing troubles with. It looks like one of them's going behind the wall. We have a couple of cars on pit road, and we'll get to the bottom of that, of course, with Ralph Shaheen and Sandy Hang in a moment. Again, the two leaders seem to be able to open a little bit of a gap on Scott Hansen. Brian Refner made the pass on Butch Miller for 4th place. Now he's trying to work on Hansen for 3rd.
I started to mention the other element besides horsepower that really has to be considered is gearing, the gear ratios that you choose for your race car. You know, you can gear to really twist the engine going down the straightaway, and you get a lot of top-end speed, but it means you really have to row through the gears when you get back in the corners. And there were some that felt maybe that was what ultimately put Jay Sauter out at Brainerd, as it was a shifter problem that befell him near the end of the race after leading so much of that one.
Well, with Bob Seneca out in front, Jay Sauter running in 2nd spot, then it's Hansen, Refner, and Tony Raines now has made a move on Butch Miller. We're going to take a commercial break and be right back to the Mello Yello 300. Fair. The Mello Yello 300 at Heartland Park, Topeka, Kansas resumes with virtually no change other than for 7th place. Leighton Reese in the number 66 machine has moved around and into 7th place. Leighton Reese in the Phillips 66 Hotchkiss Performance Pontiac has got a very fast car out there. Started a little bit back in the field, and he'll be looking to move up in this race. Let's go down to pit road. Ralph Shaheen.
Well, the problem for Darrell Waltrip seems to be that the car is having a problem getting gas at the far end of the racetrack going into turn number 1. They've changed fuel cells this morning and so forth, and it hasn't made it any better. With Dennis Lampman, the problem is the shifter is broken. It broke from right inside the cockpit of the car. This is the old broken piece right here, and right now, they're busy changing a new one. Dennis Lampman says they get a new shifter in there. He'll be on his way back out, Sandy.
We're down here with Tom Jones, and he broke a Panhard bar. That's why he's behind the wall right now. But take a peek. This grass, they've already sprayed it down. They're having trouble getting air to the engines, and that's causing overheating for some of the cars, and they'll be watching that a lot today.
You know, Brian, you'll often see in these ASA cars on a road course a shifter problem. You rarely see anymore transmission problems per se, because they've gone to these literally bulletproof, what they call Jericho transmissions. I guess you had an opportunity yesterday to talk to Leighton Reese about, you know, the observations regarding gearing, and what was it he told you, that he and Jay had about the same final drive ratio, but because of the taller ratio on first gear, he might have a little advantage in the tighter turns on the racetrack.
Well, they're able to customize the gear ratios within the transmission itself, and that's exactly what Leighton said, that he had put in a taller first gear so that he's able to get down into first gear through some of the tighter, slower turns on the race course, whereas some of the other drivers are going to have to lug in second gear with the engine down on RPMs and down on power. He feels like his advantage is going to be in the infield. Big news from a road racing specialist, of course, and he's willing to give up just a little bit of drag racing power down the straightaway.
You just saw Tony Raines using turn 9 on the inside to make a pass of Brian Refner. So Raines now up to 4th in his Baker Enterprises clean burn Pontiac. A great run in the early going for car number 87 as he now begins to close on the Ford of Scott Hansen.
Here's Rick Miller in the Extrude Hone Powerflow Chevrolet, and an off-road excursion for number 27 Ray Skillman in the DuPont Kendall Imperial Van Oldsmobile. So a little landscaping going on out there. Part of why we saw on the front of Tom Jones' car, the guys running more towards the back of the field as the leaders run a wheel off into the grass. Some of that grass flies up and gets into them a little bit. Gets into their radiators and will cause overheating problems. Guys up front not going to have as much difficulty unless, of course, they start running into traffic later in the race.
There's Brian Revner now running in 5th position. He's fallen back about 5 or 6 car lengths behind Tony Raines.
Brian Refner, of course, a contender throughout this season in individual races, and now a points contender. We asked him what he learned during last year's rookie battle that's helping him this year.
We learned that you got to take it race by race, you know, and whatever you come out at the end of the night, you know, then that's great, you know. But if you're going into that, starting that race worrying about the points, you know, then that'll end up ruining you.
Well, his fortunes have gone exactly the opposite direction in some respects. And look at this battle for position. That's now 3rd Tony Raines. 4th is Scott Hansen. 5th is Refner. And was that Leighton Reese in 6th position? Always the bridesmaid, never the bride. Well, maybe today he's going to have that opportunity. 5 times in 6 ASA road races, he has come home in 2nd position. He wants to win one in the worst way because he only runs the road courses.
Terry Labonte in that very plain-looking, almost sterile number 14. That's the 14 of Terry Labonte of Corpus Christi, Texas. The Coca-Cola Hendrick Motorsports machine. Hansen there now and Refner. So things are changing just a little bit up front, except for the fact that pole sitter Bob Seneca continues to lead. 2nd place, Jay Sauter. We'll be back. It's hot and it's heating up. Welcome back to Heartland Park, Topeka. We are under full course yellow. This is part of the reason why. Brandon Sperling in the Ultra Custom Wheels Baja Chevy Lumina. An off-road excursion. He's standing outside the race car while the crew gets ready to tow it back in. A disappointed young driver there. Let's take a look at what happened here, Rob Albright, and see if we can figure it out. Another car involved was the 49 of Randy Ruhlman, so we'll keep an eye out for that as well.
Ruhlman just running a couple of ASA races. Sperling, a regular, gunning for Rookie of the Year. There's car number 33, Brad Loney, Yale Conley. Several cars involved. It looks like Conley and Loney were both able to continue. Some pretty significant damage to Ruhlman's car number 49. He drove away, but Brandon Sperling was not able to do so. Pleasant young 24-year-old and a very talented driver. He's won motocross championships, shifter kart championships, has won some road racing championships while in IMSA. He's finding the transition to ASA a little bit tough. He'll come around, though. He's going to be a good one.
He climbs back into the race car to ride it home. Ralph Shaheen is down on pit row in the pit of the number 44 car. Ralph?
Well, that shifter right there was a problem for Pat Bordeaux. It had slipped out a bolt and it came loose and he couldn't get to the gears. But Pat, the story compounded itself from there. What's wrong?
Well, it's kind of a shame, Ralph. We some of our guys run down to see what was going on, and a couple of the officials at the end of pit road motioned us, said that we could push the car back. So the guys did. We got the shifter fixed right away, and apparently for guys going out into the edge of pit road, we're done for the race. They kicked us out. So I'm real disappointed. It really hinders us in the Pat Shower Rookie of the Year battle. And I just feel bad for the BASF Finish Master Chevrolet.
Apparently, gentlemen, there are some differences in officials. There are SCCA corner worker officials here as well as AC-Delco ASA series officials. So you better make sure you're listening to the right one, Sandy.
Well, I'll tell you what, Randy Ruhlman got caught up in a little bit of that, and they've already removed the front nose clip, and they're trying to put this car back together, actually tear it apart enough that they can get back out on the track. It's just some tough luck for these guys.
Well, no doubt they will get back out on the racetrack, and there will be some attrition today. So if you can fix something up and get the parts and pieces back together, you never know how many spots you might pick up by rejoining the race.
The lights are still on in the pace car. We are still under a full course caution here as the track crews clean up the remains of an off-course incident, shall we say. We'll be back to Heartland Park in a moment. Welcome back, everybody. Still under full course caution here as a result of a little landscaping by the 49 car, Randy Ruhlman out of Greensboro, North Carolina, and Brandon Sperling. We saw his car going home on the hook. So we are getting ready to go back to green here. We'd like to welcome to our broadcast booth Mr. Jack Flowers, a veteran sports writer specializing in motorsports and writing for Speedway Scene. Jack, welcome. Of course, we've seen you here all weekend long, but it's good to see you here in the booth with us.
It's very nice to be here. We have a good race going.
Well, you had a little bit of an interesting situation I want to talk to you about. Poor Jack here had a dental problem, had to do a little like self-dentistry this weekend. You care to share that with us?
Brian, I didn't think you were going to bring this one up now, buddy. Yeah, it was a loose tooth, so I just went ahead and pulled it myself.
There you go. This is a tough guy here, folks. Those of you that are fans of his, you got to know that it takes a tough man to write in Speedway Scene. Jack's been doing that. Any observations so far in this race, Jack, you'd like to share with us?
No, the Bob Seneca looks pretty tough, and I think it's going to be hard for somebody to beat him unless he has some problems or something. I'm not sure.
Bob, of course, has marked himself as a very good road racer. I've been impressed, though, with the patience of Jay Sauter. Normally very aggressive, has a style very similar to another guy that drives a black Pontiac named Mike Eddy. And Jay has just sat back and, you know, I guess he's waiting for Bob Seneca to make a mistake. And, Jack, I know your years of reporting, you've probably not seen Bob Seneca make too many mistakes on the racetrack.
No, I sure haven't. And I was thinking something would be very ironic. Eddie hasn't won on a road course. He's going for his 8th championship. There was Earnhardt earlier in the year who's going for his 8th championship this year, and he won his first race this year on a road course out at Sears Point.
Good observation. Mike Eddy is, in fact, being shown on the leaderboard, well off the leaderboard, but 11th in the running order. He started in 10th, so he's pretty much maintained the status quo. We have not seen a lot of jockeying for positions. Leighton Reese has picked up a couple of spots, so has Tony Raines, but for the most part, Brian, it's been, though competitive, a shuffle. Now, we were just talking about how good Mike Eddy's become on the road courses, and he has a little off-track excursion there.
Well, of course, Mike will come back to us probably sometime next week and say you shouldn't have been talking about me, because when you do, something bad happens. But, of course, talking about Mike Eddy is something we've done a lot of throughout the course of this season, and for as many years back as a lot of people can remember. He is simply the best short track driver anywhere, and he is quickly, as we mentioned at the top of the show, becoming pretty doggone proficient here against his own will, in fact, on the road course. Let's take a look and see what happened to Mike out there. I'm sure it wasn't anything too serious.
Now, where is he? The left of the screen? Is he just loses it? I don't think he got any help. Mike Miller was running right behind him in car number 18, but it looked like there was probably a gap between the two of them.
Like a little light on the back end there, maybe a little too much rear brake. That's something, of course, they can set the ratio of front to rear braking, and it may be that Mike will want to come in and take a little touch off the back brakes there. Let's go down to Ralph Shaheen with a further observation on Mike.
One of the things about Mike Eddy, Brian, is the fact that he is getting more acclimated to the car on a road race track. He says it's not so much him as the car that he's trying to dial in. He's got his oval track car dialed in so that it's second nature when he climbs behind the wheel. The reason why Mike Eddy is getting so much better on road courses is because he's feeling more comfortable with his race car.
Let's give you a quick rundown now, at least the top 10 or 15. It's Bob Seneca, Jay Sauter, Tony Raines, Scott Hansen, and Brian Refner, the top 5. 6th through 10th are currently Leighton Reese. Butch Miller is 7th. Glenn Allen Jr. is 8th. Terry Labonte runs in 9th, and J.D. Summers is 10th. Mike Eddy was 11th. He's lost several positions. Now runs right ahead of Todd Forbes on the racetrack as we watch him try to climb his way back through. Mike Miller 12th. 13th is Rick Beebe. 14th, John Cadman. And Bill Baird having a really strong run. He's 15th in car number 26. Rounding out the top 20, Tony Roper is 16th. 17th is Dave Sensiva. 18th is Jeff Neal. In 19th position is car number 95, Chuck Hemmingson. And in 20th spot is Dr. Conley, Yale Conley, in car number 3.
A lot of the drivers, of course, said to us, and I'm sure, you know, it almost goes unsaid, Jack, you could probably agree with this, they're going to be patient in the early part of the race. They're going to race that last third. Right now, they're just trying to conserve not only their own energy, but the tires on their race car and so on. We may not see a lot of aggressive racing until later on.
And it's kind of difficult to pass on a road course to begin with, so maybe they're saving what they've got until the last 10-5 laps, whatever.
Let's go down to Sandy Hang with an update on the number 9 car and Dennis Lampman.
Well, some tough luck for those guys. This is the second shifter they've gone through. They put the new one in. They thought it was going to work. It just didn't, and now they're running back to the garage to see what they can find to fix it.
Well, part of the problem could be the big Dennis maybe just yanking on that poor little shifter a little harder than it's designed to stand up to. We're not sure if that really is the problem, but it's easy to imagine.
With all those shifter problems, I'm sure sometime today, Sandy and or Ralph will have an opportunity maybe to talk to a crew chief and say, well, okay, what can you do to prevent that problem from being a recurring factor? If that's the weak link when the cars go to the road courses, what can you do the next time you go back?
Ralph Shaheen with a further update down on pit road. Ralph?
Guys, I hate to do this to you. I know you guys are the experts, but I'm going to go 180 degrees from what you guys are thinking. Talking to Bob Seneca's crew, he's going as hard as he possibly can right now, which means everybody else is to stay with him. Reason being is that his car doesn't work well at slow speeds. Now, remember we talked about pit strategies? Well, this is something to keep an eye on. They're keeping the fuel as cool as they possibly can here. Cool fuel is more volatile fuel. That means you get better performance out of it. The other thing it won't do is expand inside the can and spill out. That way, when Bob Seneca makes his pit stop, he gets all the fuel he needs to make it the distance. Anything after 44 laps is wide open. Bob Seneca's crew chief, Dan Crawford, thinks his guy can go all the way on one more tank of fuel after lap 44 with one set of tires.
Another thing as far as keeping that fuel cool, Brian, I think it's entirely conceivable we could have problems with vapor lock when these cars come down pit road. When that fuel gets exceptionally hot, the engine sometimes will seize up, and then it's virtually impossible to get it refired.
Well, another observation, too, is that the cool fuel, as Ralph talked about, you can get more of it in the race car if it's a little denser, and they're keeping it cool for a lot of reasons, and that's going to be something interesting to keep track of. You mentioned vapor lock fuel delivery problems that we saw earlier on, the number 17 car. Those have all been heat related, no doubt about it. Fuel being very volatile as it is tends to vapor lock at high temperatures. Of course, it's plenty hot under the hoods of the race cars out there, so fuel delivery has been a difficult problem, and some of the crews have found that what was a fuel delivery problem seemed to be an ignition problem. Some are having legitimate ignition troubles as well.
Terry Labonte has picked up a spot. He's moved that Coca-Cola Hendrick Motorsports Monte Carlo to 8th, getting around Glenn Allen Jr. And again, in talking to Glenn yesterday, he felt like he might be a bit down on horsepower, but he had a very good handling race car, and that's what we saw in the qualifying race. Maybe the same thing again today. But that team has had a good run here before. I think he finished 3rd in this race last year, and it didn't seem like during the early going of the race he was in the top 5 or 6. But that car just seems to stay consistent all day long, and Glenn is turning into a good little road racer.
We're at 25 laps into this 104-lap race right now. We would expect that we could also see a competition yellow situation come out here before too long. For those of you that do not understand, a certain number of laps under green, the American Speed Association mandates what they call a competition yellow. They'll put up a caution flag, allow everybody to come in and change tires, put in fuel, whatever they think they need. So we could see, and we will keep track of when a competition yellow could come out. Glenn Allen Jr. just lost a spot to the number 14 car of Terry Labonte. And Glenn Allen, of course, one of the young Lions that has been very, very effective this year. We asked him what his strategy would be for late in this race.
We've worked on our fuel mileage since we got here, and our plan is to make one stop for fuel and one set of tires, stay out front, let them come and get us. That was Darrell's plan, Scott's plan the year before. It'll be our plan this year.
Kind of surprising that Glenn has not yet won a race in 1990 His best finish, a second at I-70. He was second in the points at Cedar Rapids. He'd started back in ninth. He'd come to third, and we got a car off course. Several of them, including Darrell Waltrip and Eddie Sharp. That's the 17 of Waltrip and the red car number 50 of rookie driver Eddie Sharp. We also had been told that car number 52 was off course, and that would be Scott Lagasse. Now, I'm not sure as the full course yellow comes out once again from Roger Slack.
Competition yellow situation would not appear to be imminent. We have had a number of caution flags due to off-road excursions, the latest of which we have just witnessed there. We'll focus in a little bit more on that as we look at the number 22 car there, former rookie leader J.D. Summers, the Baby Dolls Ford, a local sponsorship. The AC-Delco Challenge Series will return. Here's a look at the standings as they were at 26 laps into the race. Welcome back, everybody. You can see some puffy clouds up there that are giving us a little bit of a break from the intense heat here in America's heartland. Butch Miller, the number 52 car there, out of the race. And the Ray Bustos Brakes Liberty Ford, high hopes at the beginning here for the defending champion, the American Speed Association. Not going to happen. Ralph Shaheen's got more.
Well, Butch was short shifting, trying to conserve fuel, gentlemen. He short shifted one time going down the back section of the racetrack, and the motor just let go on him, so his day is done. Eddie Sharp and the Sharp Motorsports number 50 is in. He was involved in the incident with Yale Connolly and Darrell Waltrip. They're changing tires, adjusting the bodywork on the right side of the right front quarter panel, changing tires, and Eddie Sharp will be turning to the race here in a minute.
A little different look to car number 50. Eddie Sharp trying to change his racing luck.
And we do have a look at a couple of off-road incidents here. And
the Columbus connection. Gary St. Amant, the older of the two, and youngster Joe Knott in car number 48. That's the Winds Ford Thunderbird of St. Amant. And Joe Knott's machine, car number 48, spinning together. And here's another incident. This one involved Eddie Sharp and Yale Conley. They bang together and collect Darrell Waltrip. He loops it in it. In fact, it didn't really look like Waltrip maybe actually made contact with Sharp. I think he just locked up his brakes, and that's what caused him to spin.
He was able to get on the brakes quick enough to avoid contact. Eddie Sharp in trying to get some repairs made. He looked like he had kind of tagged inside on Yale Conley there. Both of them went around. So they're getting worked back into the race here. Things looking a little bit different, not at the very front of this race, but certainly among the top 10 or 15 cars, things are shuffling around just a little bit. We'll take a look at the rundown here for you in a moment. There's Bob Seneca and Jay Sauter. We have seen them since, well, certainly Bob Seneca since the very first lap in the race. Jay Sauter quickly joined him. And number 87, Tony Raines, moving up from his starting spot to do battle with the leaders, but we have not seen the battle really join just yet. Raines had started sixth. He is now third. We're going back to green, and Seneca still able to hold off the hard-charging Jay Sauter there, who, as you said, is showing a lot of patience.
And even though we have not yet seen a lot of passing on the racetrack, Brian, I think the one thing you'll have to say for the first 20% of this race as Steve Shive is slowing, and that Budweiser Chevrolet car number 54, another rookie driver. One thing you will have to say is there is definitely no clear-cut favorite. I know Jack has already put his stamp of approval on Bob Seneca out in front, but look at that parade of cars, and at least any one of the top 10 has a really good shot at winning this thing.
Especially when you consider that the strategy for most of them is to be patient, just to ride around, not make any mistakes, wait for the other guy to make a mistake, move up through attrition, and then settle down to race in the last, perhaps, quarter of this event.
You saw Scott Hansen showing some smoke from the right rear corner as he was hard on the brakes in between turns 8 and 9, locking them up so as not to tag the back end of Tony Raines' car number 87.
Ralph Shaheen with another quick observation down on pit road. Ralph?
Well, Brian, let's remember now, we know that Bob Seneca has to run at least 9/10, almost 10/10 of his regular pace, as we've got a spin with Bill Baird. Looks like it's just coming out onto the front straightaway, and I think he'll be okay here in a minute.
I'm not sure I saw that unfold. We're sitting right behind where this transpired. Our vantage point is in the announce tower just off of turn number 10, and there were a couple of cars that came together. John Cadman and Bill Baird. There was one other car involved, and perhaps on a replay we'll get a chance to see it. But as Baird came off turn number 10, somebody got into the back end of car number 26. He almost gathered it in and then spun on around. Go ahead, Ralph. I'm sorry.
Well, that's okay. Let's finish this off now, Rob. As we were saying, we know that Bob Seneca has to run close to 10/10 of his pace because his car is ill handling at a slow pace. So he's running as hard as he can. Everybody else is running as hard as they can to keep up with him. They're probably trying to find a level where they can keep Seneca in sight, because if they lose touch with him, pit stops or not, his day is, they're done. He's gone. So these guys are having to run as hard as they can just to stay within eyesight of Bob Seneca.
And look at Tony Raines dropping to the low side in that clean burn Baker, car number 87. Got a good run, it looked like, coming off of turn number 10, but look at Jay Sauter accelerate away from him. That car number 1 still just has got the punch going down that long front stretch.
That's a long-legged automobile there, that number 1, with a lot of horsepower and pretty tall gearing. Runs hard. He's got good punch out of the turn because of the power, and he gets a good terminal speed at the end of the straightaway as well. And Tony Raines doing a good job to stay with him there in the number 87 machine. But the pace setter, the pole sitter, Bob Seneca, you can't touch this, at least not so far.
Our TNN broadcast cohort Buddy Baker would say, down that straightaway, that Jay Sauter's riding a rocket ship. I think that's his favorite phrase.
Too, if maybe Jay's not showing Dad Jim something this week for the Brickyard next week. I understand Jim's got a shot at driving Earl Sadler's car that Scott Brayton wrecked in practice up there last week. Yes.
Yeah, I know Jim tried to make the Brickyard race last year, wasn't able to do so. Of course, Jim has been an off and on Winston Cup racer, was a ASA driver for a number of years. One of my favorite remembrances is the one that he won, that Jim Sauter, Jay's dad, won it in Nashville. Ralph?
Well, other thing to note on the front straightaway, Rob, how Raines dipped out there. When they're running real close like that, those motors don't get as good a clean, fresh air, and that's when that temperature gauge is going to dive up. So you might see the drivers moving out like that, not necessarily just trying to set up a pass, but also to get some fresh air for that long run down that half-mile straightaway, cool those temperatures back down.
Some interesting battling back in the pack as well. Mike Miller, Glenn Allen Jr., several drivers came on pit road during our most recent caution. And look at Tony Raines giving Jay Sauter a good taste of front bumper that time through turns, where are they now? 8 and 9, I think. No, I'm wrong. They're over on the back side. I was looking at something else. As they now begin to pile up behind Bob Seneca, who stretched it out to about a 10 or 15 car length lead, and Raines has to know that. He's going to get around Jay if he possibly can.
Bob Seneca setting the pace here and trying to pull away from the field here as Jay Sauter deals with Tony Raines. Raines going up on the berm there, and Sauter able to hold him off, getting a little bit of a wiggle there, but we're seeing some good aggressive racing going on as we get into the second third of this 104-lap race. Cindy Peterson in the number 36 car off course, and a little landscaping there. Bob Seneca, look at the gap he has. You want to experience in the same thing that Tony Raines was showing us there and that Ralph Shaheen talked about. Drive your car on a hot summer day behind a big semi-tractor trailer for a while on the freeway and watch the temperature gauge go up. That's exactly what could be happening there. We're going to take a quick cutaway from the action here as Tony Raines takes second place away from Jay Sauter. And you've heard Jack Flowers of Speedway Scene up here in the booth with us. He has some interesting points to make as we go to commercial.
This ASA question comes to us from Alan Gagnon in Hudson, New Hampshire. He would like to know how a Winston Cup engine compares to an ASA engine.
A Winston Cup motor has 8 cylinders. An ASA motor has 6 cylinders. They have 17-to-1 compression, and we have 9-to-1 compression. They make about 700 horsepower, and we make about 500 horsepower.
You know, a lot is being made of this 9-to-1 compression engine that the super trucks have gone to, and it looks like the Winston Cup cars may go to as another car is off track. The ASA people, including that guy that you just looked at, Mike Miller, he speaks from experience because he was one of the guys that really pioneered that 9-to-1 engine concept, and ASA's had it for a lot of years.
It started back with
down in the Leighton Reese pit. I'm sorry, Jack, real quick. We're going to go to Ralph Shaheen with some observation because Leighton Reese came on pit road.
Well, one of the fastest guys on an ASA road course. Looks like once again you're going to have to settle for a non-win. It's unbelievable with you. What happens to you this time, Leighton?
I didn't hear your question, but well, the Hotchkiss for Phillips 66, Pontiac was running great. We were just biding our time. Just started running on 5 cylinders, apparently. I don't know what it's going to be, but you know, boy, it's awful hot out there, and it's just a shame, you know. No second place today.
It's amazing the luck this guy's had on a road course, Sandy.
Well, I'm down here in John Cadman's pit, and if you can see what we're looking at right now, they're trying to take the nose off. They believe most of this damage is cosmetic. They're trying to hurry up and get this car back out on the field. It's a tough break for them in the 70 car.
Kind of interesting, though, it wasn't Lube Tech guys scrambling around the race car. It was Felpro guys, as Tony Raines now begins to challenge Bob Seneca for the lead. But it was some of Tom Jones's people helping out.
Well, that's been certainly the mark of the cooperation, the spirit of cooperation, the sort of family atmosphere among the ASA teams. They all help each other, and of course Tom Jones, one of the first guys to jump to the aid of one of his fellow competitors, Cadman's crew, needing a little extra hand, and they find it in the form of the crew from the Felpro Pacejacks Pontiac number 0. We're seeing some challenge for the lead as they begin to work into traffic. Bob Seneca with his hands full of Tony Raines under blue skies, a little bit of cloud cover. It's hot, and we're at 35 laps. Welcome back to Heartland Park, Topeka, as Group 5 Sports presentation of the Mello Yello 300 continues. Pole sitter Bob Seneca has not relinquished the lead, but he is beginning to get his most serious challenge of this 104-lap race in the form of the number 87 Tony Raines, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and the Baker Enterprises Clean Burn Pontiac.
And behind these guys, it is still Scott Hansen third. Quietly, Terry Labonte has moved his Coca-Cola machine into fourth. Jay Sauter has dropped to fifth. Sixth is Brian Refner. J.D. Summers, the front-running rookie, is seventh. Eighth is Rick Beebe, another rookie. Ninth is Dave Sensiba, first time in the top 10 today. And Chuck Hemmingson rounds out the top 10. And boy, Tony Raines definitely has a better handling race car. But this is a horsepower racetrack. How can it be on a road course? Well, it's so hard to pass in the tight ass parts of this racetrack. You got to have the horses going down the straightaway, and that's what allows Bob Seneca to stretch it out. Even Branovich just half a dozen car lengths. It makes Tony Raines' job awfully difficult to get around.
Raines pulling out into that clean air once again because he is stuck up behind the number 84 machine, and the engine on his Pontiac not getting quite the air that Bob Seneca's Ford is. Then we look a little bit deeper back into the fields. They're already starting to contend with traffic. There's Jay Sauter, who had been challenging for the lead earlier now, and he is racing with Brian Refner a little further back.
Looks like he may need a pit stop. And there is behind him Brian Refner, who's running in sixth position, was challenging for third early. Both these drivers look like contenders for the victory. And here are a pair of rookies. That's car number 22, J.D. Summers, who has a new paint job this week. He's gone from a black car to a white one. Brandon Sperling went from white to black. Maybe they just traded spray cans this week. And in car number 71, I don't know if he's up. Is he up in the running order? That's Bobby Archer. And we're understanding now that he is a lap down. I'm not sure of that because he's running very, very strongly in that race car. And we don't show him. We just got a running order, the top 20 after 38 laps, and he is not shown in that top 20.
Here's a look at Cindy Peterson, and now Ray Skillman has pulled his car off the course. It doesn't look like, well, it could be that he spun it out there or might have just driven it off because the car is not working or the engine is stalled or something. Bob Seneca now appears to have opened up a fair amount of ground on Tony Raines, that due perhaps to running into traffic there. We saw Tony Roper, the number 10 car, going a lap down on the racetrack, and now these guys are clocking in on a number of the tail-end running race cars. Let's go down to Sandy Hang with a little bit of an observation on Tony Raines.
Well, right now his crew says the car is good, the car is strong, they're very happy with the car, but they are watching their television monitors very, very closely because they are concerned that Raines got into Sauter just a little while back. They believe that that front fender, that left front fender, could be rubbing a tire. They're concerned about that, so they're watching for that right now.
Tony Raines' lone career ASA victory came in 1992 up in Canada. Last year he ended strongly with a third-place finish at Toledo. His best runs this year, a fourth at Grand Rapids and a fifth at Brainerd. And boy, is this a familiar sight or what? He's just got this look on his face like, well, here it is again. Tony Roper, who's a good young racer in that Child's Tire Chevrolet, but again, his day ends early.
Just snake bit for some reason this season. He has not been able to buy a bit of good luck for any amount of money. We're also getting a note passed to us now that Mike Eddy's number 88 Pontiac, the Goodwrench machine, on fire out on the race course. We hope to be able to get to the bottom of that as Bob Seneca and Tony Raines continue to run out front. Raines' crew, the Howie Leddow-led Baker Enterprises Clean Burn Chevrolet crew, showing some concern over the left front side. Here's Mike Eddy going down onto pit road, and it doesn't appear as though he's under much power, if any at all.
We talked about coming in quest of an 8th championship, a 60-point advantage, which sounded like a lot behind the wall. The day is over for Mike Eddy, and we could leave Topeka, Kansas with a brand new points leader. And who would have ever guessed at the beginning of the 1995 racing season we might begin the second half of this year with last year's rookie runner-up Brian Refner as the points leader, but it could well happen.
I'd love to be a little bird in the pit of Brian Refner right now to see if the love to have a heart rate monitor on the crew chief down there to see if those guys are experiencing any butterflies now at the possibilities of being the new points leader. Refner, of course, has been very steady and very consistent throughout this season. We would not expect anything different from him. He is currently contending back in 5th and 6th spot, has just kind of settled in with Jay Sauter back there. Bob Seneca, though, boy, has he been running strong. And, of course, he ran strong at Brainerd in the road race out there until he had a problem. We saw him throwing dirt into the engine bay there to put out a fire. He resumed racing at Brainerd way down in laps. And we're going to take a look at some of the attrition in this race. Butch Miller, of course, behind the wall. Leighton Reese, who would have thought? Brandon Sperling, an off-road incident there, has got him behind the wall. Pat Bordeaux, we heard from him, a very disappointed young man. John Cadman, another road race specialist. And now we understand that Bobby Archer's out of the race as well.
Bob Seneca's nickname has always been the sneaker, but there's somebody else very sneaky in that picture. That's the 3rd place car number 14 of Terry Labonte, and the driver who is one of the best road racers in all of NASCAR, now beginning to show some strength as he closes in behind Seneca and Tony Raines.
Well, he's been sneaking, as you said, up through the field from his number 9 starting position there outside row number 5. So Labonte has moved himself very steadily and craftily up into 3rd place. He has got the 2 leaders in sight right now. We could have a 3-car race as we approach the halfway mark in this Mello Yello 300. Let's go once again down to pit road to Sandy Hank.
I'm here right now with Howdy Thomas, the crew chief for Mike Eddy. What happened in this whole deal?
Well, I really don't know what happened. All Mike did is he radioed in and said the motor broke. That's all he said.
How does this affect you with the point standing? You've got to be a little nervous at this point, dropping out so early in the race.
Yeah, well, you don't like to see this happen, but once in a while it does, and that's just part of racing, so we'll pick up the pieces and go on.
Going into this, Mike said he felt good about this road course. He was starting to learn how the car feels and how it should all operate. Any idea where you go from here?
Well, no, I guess we really don't have to worry about it anymore this year. We go back to oval racing, and I think that's pretty our strong spot.
Okay, Howdy Thomas, crew chief for Mike Eddy.
Yeah, and guess where the next oval race is? Not exactly a hotbed of Mike Eddy fans, and that is Berlin, where he dueled and diced with Johnny Benson all the way to the checkered flag the last time there. But I'll tell you what always happens. Eddie has a bad luck, a race that he has bad luck, and he's virtually invincible next time out. And we may very shortly have a change for the lead as Tony Raines pulls off of turn number 10 alongside Bob Seneca. But does he have the horses to make it stick going into turn number 1? It looks like he may. No, he has to settle in behind Seneca as Labonte is really closing now in car number 14.
Well, clearly Raines is swinging out into the clean air there every time, and we have also seen just as clearly that Bob Seneca is able to outdrag him to the end of the straightaway. So while Raines continues to challenge, Seneca maintains the lead. Let's go down to pit road, this time the other end, and Ralph Shaheen.
Brian, remember that Jerry Gunderman cars have won more road races at ASA competition than any other car owner. Well, Howie Leddow used to tune those cars, and Howie now does the Baker entries. Howie Leddow wants a road race bad, very, very badly. He wants to show that it was him that made those Gunderman cars work so well. That's why Tony Raines is looking so strong here today. And if Raines is going to get Seneca, it's going to be in this slow section. Remember, under slow conditions, Bob Seneca's Bluebird is an ill-handling race car. If Tony Raines is going to get the Bluebird, he's going to do it right in here in this tight, twisty section. Seneca's got him on the straightaway.
And no doubt Tony Raines is looking in his rearview mirror. He sees Terry Labonte on the charge, and he knows if he doesn't get around Seneca quickly, he'll have to quit worrying about the lead and worry about the guy behind him.
We're going to see what happens in this battle for the lead as Terry Labonte has sneaked up on the 2 leaders. Bob Seneca continues to lead. Raines putting on the pressure. We'll be back.
The AC-Delco Challenge Series, the premier short track racing series, has joined forces with Short Track Racing Magazine, the premier publication geared to short track racing fans. For subscription information, call 1-800-468-7876. And not much has changed, although Bob Seneca now in that Johnsonville Foods Ford Thunderbird has put just a tad bit of daylight between himself and Tony Raines, who is still in second position. He now has to contend with Terry Labonte as the leaders begin to move through some lapped traffic. We can see that's John Freeman's car number 16, teammate and car owner to the top 10 automobile of leading rookie driver Rick Beebe. And it looks like somebody has skated off course as you see Freeman driving through a little bit of haze or dust, if you will.
Well, right now we see the number 18 car of Mike Miller trying to avoid going a lap down on the racetrack, and so he could be the one pedaling pretty hard out there. Here's a look at some pretty congested racing as Tony Raines had to get hard on the brakes to avoid going into the back of Seneca's car there, and avoid it he apparently did, although we saw earlier that Howie Leddow was having some problems dealing with the thought that maybe he had a fender rubbing on a tire. Well, if he had a fender rubbing on the tire, maybe now he still does. We have a change in the lead as Tony Raines has used traffic to his advantage, moved around Bob Seneca. Maybe Seneca has slowed, and now it's Miller pedaling as hard as he can to try to avoid losing a lap to Tony Raines, the new race leader here at 47, let's call it 48 laps into this Mello Yello 300.
Brian, I wonder if Mike Miller hasn't maybe had an off-course situation, because he was about half a lap behind the leaders, and suddenly he's in jeopardy of going a lap down, and you can't have that happen here at Heartland Park and still be a contender for a top 10 run.
Well, he went on pit road real quickly just a moment. Let's take a look at the pass for the lead. Here comes Tony Raines as Seneca goes up behind Mike Miller, and Miller setting the pick for Tony Raines to make the inside move on that left-hander up on the berm, off the gas quickly, keeps it together, and your new race leader is the number 87 of Tony Raines of the Baker Enterprises Clean Burn Pontiac. So if Howie Leddow is going to get a win, well, it's certainly looking good for him here right now.
And wisely, Bob Seneca did not contest the pass too hard. He now has fallen back into the clutches of Terry Labonte as Tony Raines begins to stretch it out by 8, 10, 12 car lengths.
Let's go down to Sandy Hang, who has corralled Mike Eddy, the driver of the 88 car.
Mike Eddy is now in his street clothes. He's trying to cool down here. Mike, you're the kind of guy that learns something from every race, and you're trying to learn from the road courses. What did you learn from what happened today?
Well, I didn't run long enough today. The car was working a lot better than it ever has before, and so we learned a few things, but we had troubles again today, and you can believe me, nobody's really having any fun out there today.
The heat, how bad was the heat? Was it affecting your driving abilities?
Well, the heat ain't that bad until you get out of the car, and then that's when it hits you. As long as you're going around doing something, everything's all right, but as soon as you get out, your head gets a little dizzy, and you just want to sit down.
And that's what Mike is doing here right now, sitting down and taking a break.
While we were at break, Chuck Hemmingson, who had worked his way into the top 10, spun in between turns 9 and 10, and everybody took evasive action. He's dropped now back about 2/3 of a lap off the leader's pace, and there's Bob Seneca, who things are not going quite the way he had anticipated at this point, as he's beginning to lose some ground to Tony Raines.
Well, we're also seeing Rick Beebe here in 7th spot, the leading rookie right now, and behind him in 8th spot, the number 52 car driven by Scott Lagasse.
And Tony Raines has suddenly darted down pit road in car number 87. We're under green. I don't know if that's intentional or not, or planned or not, I should say. Obviously, it's intentional. He comes to a stop. They're going to go to work on the right-hand side. The hood is still down. It doesn't look like any engine problems. So this is obviously a stop that they definitely needed.
Well, they must have for fuel. They've been running for quite a few laps, and of course, many of the leaders have not pitted. Some of the others did go into the pits during one of the many earlier cautions. We're not scheduled for a competition, Yellow, until lap 59. And we're probably, well, a good 8 or 9 laps from that point in the race. We're at lap number 50 right now, so we're 9 laps from a scheduled competition Yellow. Bob Seneca has re-inherited the lead. Tony Raines in and out quickly, right side tires and fuel, no doubt. So he'll have to try to fight his way back up towards the front from midway in the pack.
Mike Eddy said it all. He loves to race. He lives for the Sundays when he gets behind the wheel and goes racing. He said, I can tell you, make no mistake, nobody's having much fun out there today. It's hard work, and you know, they get paid pretty well when they win, so sometimes you got to work at it. It can't always be nothing but fun, that's for sure.
Rob, you know something I found interesting there? He's talking about the heat. Here we have like 100-degree weather, and all the Winston Cup guys, they have some kind of cooling systems in their cars. These guys are not using cool suits or any kind of cooling systems. I think that's pretty remarkable. They can do this without a cooling system.
Well, they do. Some of them do have the cooler with the ice, but not much. And I know some of them have the cool vest, but rather than putting on the vest, what a lot of them have told me they were going to do, Brian, today, was just open the front of their suit and kind of stick that cool vest in. Because once it gets hot, it's worse than having nothing on at all, so they'll pull it back out. Scott Hansen, one of the lead top 5 or 6 automobiles, has come on pit road as well.
And I think we may be able to get some more information from Ralph and Sandy that what's happened here is some of these crews have kind of thought that they'd get a caution by now. They did not come in earlier, and now they're finding out they have to come in because they're low on fuel. I believe that could be the problem. And of course, if they have to come in, why not change tires? It may put them back in the pack. They're losing a lot of positions, but they at least will have enough to keep going when the next caution comes out.
This is now first and second again. Bob Seneca reappropriates the lead with Tony Raines' pit stop. And Terry Labonte is going to make a hard left-hand turn and bring that Coca-Cola Rick Hendrick machine on pit road.
Again, fuel the reason, I'm sure, for him coming in. Mike Miller there going hard at it with Bob Seneca, the race leader. Miller trying to get his lap back. That would be what he needs to do in anticipation of a caution if he can move around Seneca. Let's go to Ralph Shaheen in the pit of Terry Labonte.
This was pretty much a scheduled pit stop, according to crew chief and father, Bob Labonte. Terry comes to a stop. His father gives him some water. They will change tires. They will get some fuel. Terry Labonte should be able to go the rest of the way from here, gentlemen. Remember, we said anything after lap 44 was all it was going to take. A full fuel load, and these guys will be able to go all the way on one fresh set of tires. Tire changes just about completed. Oh, they didn't have the tire ready, so this stop is going to go a little bit longer than Terry Labonte needed. The car is just about finished. That left front tire is on, and he's on his way now to Glenn Allen's pit where Sandy Hang is waiting.
Glenn has just pulled away. He's taken on 2 right side tires as well as fuel. He was in earlier for a 4 tire change in fuel. So Glenn's pit crew does believe that he should be good now for the rest of the race.
Wow, that's interesting. If Glenn can go the distance, he's now made 2 stops, while several of the drivers have made none. Bob Seneca now will relinquish the lead in car number 84. We've been told by Torch that he might have a lot of grass on the grill of his automobile. We could see that there was quite a bit of it on Terry Labonte's grill as well.
Well, we talked about that earlier, that the leaders wouldn't have a problem with grass kicked up by cars in front of them, that the drivers at the tail end of the field would. Now Bob Seneca comes in for his first scheduled, or his first stop of any kind. He waited a little bit longer than everybody else, perhaps due to the fact that his crew was able to get cool fuel, as Ralph called it, into the car. Maybe he had a little bit more to work with there. The pit crew of the Johnsonville sausage machine running around. They're going to go all the way with 4 tires. Up the left side of the car comes. But we did see Labonte's grill full of grass. We did see Seneca's grill. We heard that his grill was full of grass, and cooling problems are a result of those drivers coming in to the back of the bunch and dealing with lap traffic.
Bob Seneca is underway, but Tony Raines got by far the best stops of the front-running 3s. He's well ahead of Terry Labonte, who now I think will be right alongside Bob Seneca when we come back from break.
Our new leader is Jay Sauter. He has inherited the position because some of the leaders stopped and some of the others went out of contention. Sauter leads it. We're coming back in a moment. Welcome back to Heartland Park, Topeka, Kansas. A new leader very quickly. The leader had been Scott Lagasse, who was out in front. Actually, Jay Sauter. Sauter went into the pits. So did Lagasse, because they had not yet pitted in the race. And here's what happened to Jay Sauter when he went down there to take on fuel and tires.
I think he goes just a little too hard, a little too far, squeals it to a stop, overshoots his pit, and of course they must pull the car back, or he must back it up before they can go to work.
Let's go down to Ralph Shaheen with a follow-up on what happened to Jay Sauter.
Oh, Rob, they didn't back it up at all. Look at these skid marks. This is about 50, 60 yards that Jay Sauter slid, almost taking everybody out down here. He ended up all the way down in Bob Seneca's pit stall, which is exactly where they pitted his car, because his was right next door. These very long cables that these air guns are hooked up to stretch just far enough, and they were able to get over there, get everything changed. This crew for Jay Sauter did a tremendous job in servicing the #1 car under a very stressful situation. One of the fastest stops we saw all day.
Tony Raines in the Howie Ledow crew chief led Baker Enterprises Clean Burn Pontiac is the new leader. A very efficient series of pit stops has put the number 87 car back out in front. At Heartland Park, Topeka, Tony Raines in the number 87 Pontiac Grand Prix out in front right now. We understand he may be having a little bit of a fuel problem. In any case, he is so far out in front, he may even be able to come down pit road, splash and go, keep going but he's going to have to see. Towards the end of this race, fuel could be a problem for the number 87 car. That is what we are hearing. Now, they have really scattered out, and getting a rundown has been a challenge for the Know-It-All brothers. Torch, Scorch, and Zorch are working on it pretty hard back there. The guys we call the Know-It-All brothers are getting a rundown for us, and we'll let you know.
Here's how we know that Tony Raines may have a fuel problem. We've reached lap number 56. I believe he came in at lap 52. That is exactly one half of this race completed, 104 laps, making up the total distance of the Mello Yello 300 this afternoon. They then probably measured how much fuel they dumped into car number 87 and said, uh-oh, that thing was probably bone dry when they filled it up. We had a lot of cautions in the first half of this race. Should we go green most of the rest of the way, he's going to burn more fuel. That's why I'm sure they're concerned about fuel consumption and being able to go the distance. He has, at this point, Brian, a big enough lead. Even if we go green the rest of the way, I think he could almost come on pit road, do a splash and go, and get back out in front.
Well, that's what I just said, and we had talked about during the break. And Tony Raines, the leader, is just all alone on the racetrack. It looks like a qualifying run for the number 87 car. Dave Sensiba in the number 4 machine is out of the race. And let's go down to Ralph Shaheen with more.
Well, Dave Sensiba is not feeling very well. He's a little under the weather right now. He took in some exhaust fumes, so he's trying to get some air, trying to cool off. Leighton Reese has replaced him in the car. Also, we want to report on J.D. Summers' car, the number 22, is having serious problems with cooling, so he's running around at a pretty slow pace right now.
Now, we talked about running the rest of this race under green, and Jack Flowers, I mean, as Gary Sanaman, who was in the top 5, has come on pit road. The reason the hood is off is to try to get the thing a little bit more cool. But Jack Flowers, you had an observation. I think it's a good one.
Well, don't we have a competition yellow coming up by ASA here? That could change things considerably.
Absolutely.
Supposed to be on lap 59, which is 2 or 3 laps away.
But the question is, even with a competition yellow, if you're Howie let out, do you bring Tony Raines on pit road or not and give up all that track position? I don't think so.
Well, we'll have to wait, watch, and see. It seems as though when we try to outguess these crew chiefs, all we do is outguess ourselves. Tony Raines out in front. They're showing lap 58 on the big board here. We're not sure how accurate that is. And that would tell us that a lap from now, they would be throwing a caution flag, what we call the competition yellow. A mandatory yellow flag after 30 laps of green flag racing.
There's Tony Raines now working his way through some traffic. That's Dave Anspaugh's car number 37. Early in the race and during the qualifying race yesterday, Anspaugh had his own little personal battle with racing broadcaster Pat Patterson. I don't know how Pat talked Randy Larson into letting him drive that car. Probably a big checkbook. And the yellow is out. There is the competition yellow, Brian, at lap 58 of 104.
Well, it's actually, they're just approaching the lap number 59. We saw 58 on the board as they went by, so the competition yellow is out. Tony Raines, the race leader now. It'll be interesting to see how his strategy, if in fact the crew is concerned about fuel, whether they'll bring him in to put enough fuel in to run all the way to the end.
If you just joined us, you can see that little, looks like a fairing on the very top of Tony Raines' car. That was an in-car camera. We had 5 of them lined up for you today, and unfortunately, a mechanical problem with a helicopter, no in-cars.
We're getting ready to go to a commercial break, and we'll do so with another question. And our colleague Jack Flowers will have that question answered when we come back.
This ASA question comes to us from Dave Burgoyes in Stafford Springs, Connecticut. He would like to know why ASA cars have headlights and taillights painted on their bodies when other sanctioned bodies do not have that painted on their race cars.
The reason ASA puts the headlight and taillight details on the front of the race cars is so that each one of our race cars looks identical to the car that you drive on the street throughout the week.
Our ASA officials answering the question from Jack Flowers of Speedway Scene. Jack has been with us here in the booth observing the first half of this race. And, well, Jack, as we say goodbye, any thoughts here as you head out and get ready to watch the tail end of this one?
It's been a long time since I've seen an ASA race, and I'll tell you what, the appearance and the progress that this series has made, Rex Robbins needs to really take a bow and congratulate himself for bringing this thing along.
Well, we'd certainly like to thank you for joining us. We hope you won't go too far away because we might need to lean on you for a little bit of knowledge before this day is done. Jack Flowers of Speedway Scene. And right now, another one of our features here, we look a little more towards the young fans of the American Speed Association, and our colleague Josh Duvall has that one.
Hi, I'm Josh Duvall. There's been 2 women in ASA racing previous to now, but this year we got a 3rd, and Cindy Peterson's here to stay. Cindy, how'd you get into ASA racing?
We raced area tracks up in Wisconsin on the dirt for about 6 years. We raced 2 years on the asphalt up at Slinger, and we figured it was time to move up and do something that was a little more nationally televised, so we picked ASA because that's where our budget was at.
How do the guys treat you here in ASA?
Well, the guys know that we're here to race. We're very serious about our program, and we're here to do one thing, and that's race, and they know that, so they treat me pretty good.
Thank you very much, Cindy. Those questions came from Libby Green of Springfield, Missouri. If you have a question, send it to me at The Young Racers, P.O. Box 26792, Charlotte, North Carolina, 28221.
And the other 2 lady racers, Cindy Peterson, there in the MVR car number 36, succeeds. Janet Guthrie and Robin McCall, who is now married to Wally Dallenbach. You know that name. He was a regular for a while in the Trans Am Series and then NASCAR Grand National. He was, he was supposed to be here this weekend, didn't make it.
A lengthy pit stop for Scott Hansen in the number 53 machine. Ralph Shaheen has more.
That's because he climbed out of the car and reigning ASA champ Butch Miller got behind the wheel. What's up, Scott?
Well, the car is just unbelievably hot inside, and you know, I did something to my elbow last week, and I just kept saying it wouldn't bother me, and all the steering and shifting and everything, you know, it just got to me, you know. I mean, I hate to see this, you know. We always got such good cars here, and you know, Butch might not have been able to come in. I don't know what we'd have did. We'd probably just slowed down and rode it out, but we got a good car. You know, I'm sure we get a couple cautions. Butch can bring it back to the front.
One car everybody's keeping an eye on is Tony Raines, and Sandy Hang is standing by with his crew chief.
Right now, Howie let us here. We noticed Tony did not come in during the last break. How is the fuel situation with you, and what are you going to do?
Well, it's going to be close, but I don't think we'll have a problem with fuel. Tire wear is excellent. Goodyear really had a great tire here. And, car's running good. Tony's doing just a super job. He's so smooth out there. Terry Labonte's also awfully smooth, and Seneca, they're both going to be tough.
Okay, well, you heard it from his crew chief. He's taking a gamble, and he's going for the checkered flag.
Boy, the point standings look like they're really going to shake out with Mike Eddy, the points leader, coming in, dropping out of the race. Brian Revner having a very smooth, consistent run. Gary Sanaman is still in the top 10. Scott Hansen's car now drops to the rear of the field, and Butch Miller have his work cut out for him. Scott's a lot taller than Butch, so he's not going to be real comfortable in that cockpit, I'm sure. Glenn Allen, who had dropped from 2nd to 5th in the standings, he's suddenly now being shown in 4th in this race. So see some real jockey points positions before the day is out.
The 2 contenders up front that we'll be keeping the closest eye on, of course, Tony Raines and now Terry Labonte. Let's go to Ralph Shaheen, who's down in the pits of the number 1 machine.
Mike Jaffe is Jay Sauter's crew chief. You having brake problems?
Yeah, it seemed like in the beginning of the race there, he heated the front brakes up and they went away, and now he can't get the pedal to come back. We thought maybe running around under the yellow would help him, but just no pedal yet.
And gentlemen, this is a real tough racetrack to run out of brakes on, going into turn number 1, and of course with a very tight section dumping out onto the front straightaway as we go back to green.
That would explain Jay Sauter's sort of slow fade out of contention in 2nd place back to where he is right now. We get ready to go back green. In fact, the flag has dropped, as you can well tell. And Tony Raines in the number 87 Baker Enterprises Clean Burn Pontiac out in the lead. We heard Howie Leddow say he thinks it's going to be close, but the fuel will not be a problem. Tires are good, the driver's good, so they would appear to have most, if not all, of what they need to win this one.
Pontiac of Tony Raines leading the Chevrolet of Terry Labonte ahead of the Ford of Bob Seneca. And there's the 4th place car number 15, the Eaglewood Construction CarQuest machine of Glenn Allen Jr., who's made brilliant decisions on pit stops, and that has put him in a challenging position in car number 15, really now putting some heat on Seneca.
He's certainly challenging the Bluebird number 84 for that 3rd place position. Glenn Allen Jr., one of those young lions nipping at the heels of Mike Eddy in the point standings. Mike Eddy in the pits watching this one, and Glenn Allen going after another one of the veterans, the winningest driver in ASA, Bob Seneca.
Terry Labonte locking up the brakes momentarily going into turn number 9, but hangs on to 2nd position, giving chase of Tony Raines, but it looks like Tony's beginning to leg it out in car number 87. And you know, Tony had to wonder, am I now on the restart that everything's closed up, and am I going to be able to pull away from this Winston Cup veteran? And at least for the first few hundred yards, that question has been answered. The 87 has been the class of the field for much of the day.
Terry Labonte's number 14 looked pretty clean. In fact, they were oh, there was a little, oh, that was just somebody wheels in the dirt there. It was right behind Terry Labonte's car. For a second, I thought it was a puff of smoke out of the 14, but Labonte's crew, they were actually making decals and putting them on the body of that car as late as Saturday. And so Labonte, with a brand new entry here, has moved himself up from the starting position. He started this race in 9th place and has been contending in 2nd spot since we can remember for a while.
You know, we had said that Leighton Reese was not going to finish 2nd again today, but guess what? He's right behind Glenn Allen Jr. in Dave Sensiba's car number 4. And unless I'm wrong, I think he's still on the lead lap. Now, he may be a lap in arrears, depending on when he came in and let when Sensiba let Reese substitute for him, but he's still up there in that lead pack if he's in fact on the lead lap. And there's Butch Miller in Scott Hansen's car, deep in traffic, running through some traffic there, coming around Chuck Hemmingson's car number 95, tucked right in behind Joe Knott in the 48 machine.
That is Butch Miller in Scott Hansen's car. We've had a couple of on-the-fly driver changes. Leighton Reese now drives Sensiba's number 4. Butch Miller drives Scott Hansen's number 53. We had some driver changes prior to the start of the race. We saw Scott Lagasse go into the 52 of Ken Schrader. We also saw Bobby Archer behind the wheel of the 71 that is normally driven by A.J. Cooper. So a little bit of musical chairs going on out there, most of which has been caused by the heat, the conditions, by injuries and problems of that the drivers have, just not wanting to either get in the car or not able to stay in it.
And in the way of juxtaposition, where these drivers are relative to the leaders, Butch Miller and Joe Knott were coming off turn 10, going onto the straightaway as Miller does a little bit of dirt dancing there, as the leaders had already gone through turn number 1 at the end of the very long straightaway. So Miller's got a long way to go and about 40 laps to get it figured out.
Again, keep an eye on the grills down low there, the air where the air enters the radiator on these cars. And early on, of course, they were clean, and among the front runners, they were clean. Late in the race now, we're starting to see a lot of grass beginning to accumulate as the drivers work their way through traffic, and some of them that have stayed out there for a while or may experience overheating problems a little bit later on.
Down the long straightaway, Tony Raines now leading with Terry Labonte closing, makes the left-hand turn, still watching for the 48 of Joe Knott and the 53 of Butch Miller. There they are. That's the two cars now just exiting turn number 10 and heading onto the long straightaway. So Butch, if he wants to give Scott a good, strong finish today, and Scott will get the points, he's got a lot of traffic, a lot to get through, and a lot of distance to make up.
Those two cars running hard as we have just restarted after a competition yellow. We're well into the second half of this race. Now is when we would expect to see two things. Even more attrition among the drivers, as we've seen Scott Hansen and Dave Sensiba get out of their cars, both of them complaining. Even Mike Eddy, who was taken out of the race by mechanical problems, complaining that it is extremely hot out there. We also will see more racing coming up, and that will commence immediately after this opportunity for you to watch some very important messages. We'll be right here when you come back. The Mello Yello 300 continues at Heartland Park, Topeka, Kansas. How would you like to really be a part of the race team? Well, Racing Electronics, the official communications equipment supplier to the American Speed Association, is giving away a unit and Bearcat scanner along with a 1 year's racer frequency membership on each ASA telecast here on TNN. To enter the drawing, send your name and address on a postcard to Racing Electronics, Box GFS, 8701 Mallard Creek Road. You saw the address in a moment. Charlotte, North Carolina, 28262. Just like this guy, you can be a part of the action. Hey, we've been getting letters from across the country, even as far away as Alaska. This week's winner is Albert Goodwin Jr. from Waltham, Massachusetts. Congratulations, Albert, and enjoy your scanner from Racing Electronics.
I'll give you an unofficial top 15. It is Tony Raines, Terry Labonte, Bob Seneca third, Glenn Allen Jr. all over. Seneca in 4th position. Leighton Reese is 5th in Dave Sensiba's car, and look at Allen all over Seneca. He wants that spot. Scott Lagasse runs 6th in Kenny Schrader's car. 7th is Gary St. Amant. 8th is car number 1, Jay Sauter. 9th is Jeff Neal's car number 75, Darren Law, shown unofficially in 10th. 11th through 15th, Darrell Waltrip. Car number 33, Brad Loney, 12th. 13th and having a great run is Todd Forbes. 14th after an off-track excursion is car number 5, Brian Refner. Not finding it easy taking over the points lead. And we're showing Doc Conley, Yale Conley in 15th position. Butch Miller is unofficially 16th in Scott Hansen's car number 53.
Glenn Allen Jr. is just driving the wheels off the number 15 car out there, the Eaglewood Construction CarQuest Pontiac. No holds barred, pulling out all the stops, getting the wheels up on the berms there, and Bob Seneca has been feeling heat all day long from a variety of different drivers, and now it's for third place with Glenn Allen Jr. challenging. Out front, Tony Raines trying to resurrect the old wide track Pontiac ad campaign perhaps of years past. We heard Leighton Reese say in the qualifying race he had never seen a Pontiac as wide as that of Tony Raines in the qualifier, and Raines is going to need every inch he can find from side to side to keep Terry Labonte behind him.
Well, we understand there has been another driver substitution as John Cadman has climbed behind the wheel of Rick Beebe's car number 6. Cadman, whose Lube Tech Ford went out early, car number 70. We did want to say hi to Tasha Dehart, the daughter of the president of the Lube Tech Corporation. She's been under the weather a little bit, and Tasha, we say, get to feeling better, and sorry that Cadman wasn't able to have a better run in the Lube Tech machine today, but he's back out there in substitution for another driver.
Of course, Rick Beebe and his crew cannot afford to keep that car off the racetrack or let that car not finish this race. They are leading in the Pat Shower Memorial Rookie of the Year competition, a $50,000 bonus, and of course a lot of bragging rights for the Dennis Grossnickel-led team of Rick Beebe, number 6. So they have put another driver out there. That is 3 substitute drivers during the race, a couple prior to the start. And we're seeing attrition from the heat. We're seeing teams that are desperately in need of keeping their race cars out there on the course because of the points battle, doing so by using substitute drivers.
And the rookie battle is a good one. Rick Beebe with 806 points. J.D. Summers, who struggled a bit today after running strong early, having some mechanical problems, 764 points, just one ahead of Rick Miller with 763, and Steve Shive being shown 4th in the rookie standings with 716, but he also had a rough day today.
Well, out of those 4 that you just mentioned, Rick Beebe's car number 6, really the only one running even close to contention, as you said before. Summers out, and we have a caution flag on the race course right now. I'm not sure why, I'm sure, but we will. One thing I am sure of is that we will find out why in just a moment. So Tony Raines, the battle with Terry Labonte will get a bit of a breather. And we will also take a pause from the action here at the Mello Yello 300 in Heartland Park, Topeka, Kansas. We're working our way towards the final quarter of this 104-lap race. See you in a moment. We're back with 73 laps completed out of 104 scheduled here today on the Mello Yello 300. That's 300 kilometers of racing here, 104 laps on the 1.8-mile course. The General Motors Specialty Parts Organization held a benefit for the Special Olympics this weekend in Kansas City. Luminaries in attendance included Mike Skinner, Scott Lagasse, Mike Eddy, and our own Ralph Shaheen.
We've been doing ASA racing live on TNN now for some 5 or 6 years, and over the course of that time I've had plenty of opportunities to watch some of the best stock car drivers in the world, such as Mike Eddy. And I gotta admit, like any other armchair race fan, I've dreamt that I too could possibly, you know, take it to Mike Eddy. I'm finally going to get my chance here today, and I even get to do it for a great cause like the Special Olympics. There he is, Mike Eddy. He's nothing. 7-time ASA champ, that's nothing. This is serious racing today. I hope I beat Mike Eddy. If I do anything here today, I want to be in front of Mike Eddy. Of course, the chances of that are slim and none. But I did get a chance to check in with Johnny Benson, former ASA champ, about what it takes to beat Mike Eddy, and he said, put him in the wall. We'll see. Well, I got it wide open and it's doing nothing.
Well, there goes Shaheen, blaming it on mechanical problems again. I think he can't get a kink out of his leg.
Well, I understand that Jeff Brown, ASA's tech chief, wasn't there.
You know, I'm kind of surprised that since this was a charity event, there was so much cheating going on. How do you feel about that?
Well, I don't know if there was cheating. Maybe just the best driver won today, Ralph.
Well, you know, I noticed a lot of tire marks on the side of your car there, Mike. Any comments about that?
Yeah, them were on there when I got in it.
Like any of the best racing teams in the country, mine was a 2-car effort. Frank Gahn, who's in charge of sports marketing for GM SPO, was my teammate. And I'm vindicated, folks. His car performed just as badly as mine. But, you know, like they say in racing, there's always next week and another race. You know, Frank, I wanted to talk to you. I was watching what I did out there, and I think I showed some flashes of brilliance. And with the proper support and sponsorship money from General Motors, GM Goodwrench, and AC-Delco, I think...
But he has great legs, you know. I don't care if he was slow.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, you know, I know where both of you live, so watch what you say. And I do want to thank Bill Kentling and the folks at Special Olympics. I was in the Heartland Park Topeka car, and even though their cart's a little slow, Bill does have a great racetrack.
Well, some other things. Nothing has really changed up front as Terry Labonte continues to chase Tony Raines. We'd also like to say thank you to the folks from Robert Brogdon, his GM dealership in Kansas City, and especially to Hoot Gibson of the Robert Brogdon dealership, who provided 2 cargo vans for use by the TV crew for that special event. So thanks, folks, and KC, the Robert Brogdon people.
Tony Raines trying to drive wide in front of Terry Labonte. There you're looking at, after 74 laps in the race, we're getting a pretty good run down here. We would hope to be able to tell you where your favorite driver is here in just a moment. We'll try to do the very best we can at that. Tony Raines, the number 87. Terry Labonte runs second. Bob Seneca, the pole sitter and early leader, runs third. Glenn Allen Jr. giving him all he can handle back there in 4th spot. And they are the front runners in this Mello Yello 300.
Looks like Seneca's trying to distract Glenn Allen with a little bit of something trailing. Looks like some tape off the back of that race car.
Mike Miller running in the back of the field there. We saw him come in for an unscheduled stop and then cut a tire down. Sandy Hain with more on the 18 car.
Hey, just a little funny story. He had to take 2 tires on. He said to his crew, I need 2 rear tires and I need Gatorade now. So he was just as thirsty as he needed the tires.
And another Miller Rick off course now, the one of the rookie contenders, and the track crew there signaling everybody to slow down. Now one of them climbing into the race car. Apparently they feel as though it's kind of in the racetrack equivalent of the fall line there that we talk about in ski racing sometimes, that if someone else should come off course, they would end up in the same spot. So Roger Slack is waving the yellow flag, a full course caution here. We didn't get to do a whole lot between the last caution and now, but we expect to have more for you when we come back. We'll take another quick break. Rick Miller into the barricade there, and the course crew really kind of with some urgency signaling for some help over there. We saw the lady that's standing behind the car right now a moment ago signal during commercial that the driver, Rick Miller, was not conscious, or not apparently conscious. It could be that he has passed out from the heat, or that the impact there has rung his bell. In either case, we would have to suspect that he's a little more susceptible to kind of like lights out because of the heat. I mean, these guys are really starting to suffer now.
And Rick Miller just a few races ago led the rookie points battle, had a really hard crash last time out 3 weeks ago at Cedar Rapids in Iowa, and they were hoping to regroup and have a good run today. From our perspective, Brian, what the viewers saw, it didn't look like the damage was all that severe to the race car, so one has to wonder if maybe he hasn't just gotten ill behind the wheel of the race car. It's just purely conjecture at this point.
Ralph lose-a-lap Shaheen down there with a little more on the heat story.
Well, Brian, we got a temperature gun here for you, and while the sun was out, we were reading this. It was up to about 127, 28. Now it drops down to 121. That's the difference when that sun goes behind the clouds. The cement, a little bit cooler. It's up to only 115 on the cement. Pretty warm down here on pit road. And it's 120 some odd plus on the pavement for the asphalt here on pit road. It's at least that on the racetrack where the drivers are.
Oh, and in those race cars, I wouldn't be surprised if the temperature inside the race car is 135, 140 degrees, easily.
And trying to get some air to move around in there has been a challenge for the crews all weekend long. They have added all sorts of extra duct work. But as you know, these cars are very aerodynamically designed. They're designed to let air pass over the top and out the back of the race car pretty efficiently, so trying to get some in the cockpit is more than a tough job. So as the crew continues to deal with the number 31 car and its driver Rick Miller out of Dunbar, Pennsylvania, we'll take yet another commercial break and pause from the action, and we'll be right back here to the Mello Yello 300 in Kansas. We're back at Heartland Park, Topeka, Kansas, and trying to stay cool. These folks breaking out umbrellas and, of course, anything they can find to try to keep the temperature from rising, keep the radiator from boiling over. And right now it's going to, if it was hot inside the race cars, look at the race track here. This is the entrance to turn 10 as they go on to the main straightaway. A lot of rubber getting shed off right there as they come out of the S's and onto the main straightaway. And if the drivers were hot in their race cars before, things are really going to get toasty in there now, because we are under a full course caution that could be extended somewhat. It could be a lengthy one, because they are moving the crew in to remove Rick Miller from his race car by taking the top off the car and bringing him out of there. He took a hard hit, And as the race cars that are still in the race circulate the course very slowly, even less air than before is going to be coming in there, and these guys are going to get boiled real nice inside the cars now.
Well, this happened yesterday with both Kerry Teague's incident in the Super Truck race and Doug Mayer's ASA practice crash, where they brought in the jaws of life and removed the top of the race car. And that always looks really serious. And when you're a race fan, you know, it kind of makes you concerned, as you are concerned, but in most cases it's a very precautionary kind of thing. If they suspect there might be a neck or a back injury, rather than aggravate it by dragging a driver out of the race car, they'll err on the side of being conservative with him and taking care of him. I know Kerry Teague, boy, it took a long time to get him out, and there was a lot of concern. He ended up back at the racetrack. But you do take a really hard ride. These cars have a very rigid center section. It's designed as a cocoon to protect the race driver. But when you do hit, you hit very hard. And there's not a lot of runoff room here at Topeka compared to some other road courses. A lot of road courses, once you go off course, it's a long way to run off before you get into a concrete barrier. Not so here, so you can still be at a very high rate of speed when you do contact the concrete. So just as quickly as we know something on Rick, we'll let you know.
Well, there's also a possibility of a red flag, because the drivers will certainly be voicing their concerns, as will the crew, about how hot it is to just be driving around out there 10 or 15 miles an hour behind the pace car. So they may stop the race while they remove Rick Miller from the race car and let these drivers get out of their cars and cool off just a little bit. We're understanding that the red flag has in fact been shown to the field. There it is, Roger Slack waving the red. So they are going to let the other drivers come down onto pit road, climb out of the cars and cool off a little bit while they get Rick Miller out of his race car.
Well, the way they were running prior to this stoppage of this race at lap 78, it was Tony Raines, the leader, who's led much of the going. Terry Labonte ran in second position in car number 14, followed by Bob Seneca, Glenn Allen Jr., and Leighton Reese, who was in Dave Sensipa's car. But just prior to the red being displayed, Leighton had brought that car onto pit road. Scott Lagasse was shown in 6th, Gary Sanaman in 7th. 8th was Jay Sauter's car number 1. Darrell Waltrip was 9th in car number 17. Car number 75, Jeff Neal, was in 10th position. 11th through 15th were Brad Loney, shown in 11th. Brian Refner, who may leave here the new points leader today, in 12th. Todd Forbes 13th. Dr. Yale Conley 14th, and Joe Knott 15th. 2 other drivers still on the lead lap. Butch Miller subbing for Scott Hansen 16th, and Chuck Hemmingson 17th position in car number 95.
So there you can see the ASA officials lining the cars up. They're going to leave them, of course, in their running order on the racetrack rather than scattering them all out in their pits, which are in a decidedly different order. Here's Bill Baird in the number 26 machine. He was doing a good job earlier in the race, and now, of course, has slipped back just a little bit. Bill, an interesting fellow that loves to fly, and he has a very special airplane. Invited me to kind of play with his new toy just a little bit. Just a little snug here in the back. Of course, I had to put on a flight suit along with his pilot. Probably the only vehicle you'll ever see. Probably the only time I'll ever get in a vehicle where the button for the air conditioner is right next to the one that says bomb drop. And that was a pretty interesting sight as I was sitting in the rear cockpit of the plane with Bill Baird's good friend Bill Brunette, I believe his last name is. It's a pilot giving a thumbs up. We're getting ready to go a little bit of booming and zooming in an L-39 Albatross. This is a Czechoslovakian built, Russian designed fighter trainer. And there are about 20 of these in the country, Rob, that, well, Bill Baird, this is his newest toy. He's already gone through aerobatic planes and a number of other pretty fast-flying aircraft, and this is his latest foray into the field of sport flying. And I was pretty thankful that we returned from a couple of nice fast runs over the racetrack, all intact. A new look. What do you think?
Well, I have my own theory as to why that flight suit was a little tight in the seat. It's called depends.
You just might be right, but I'm never going to tell. At least I didn't decorate the inside of the cockpit there, and had a very enjoyable little timeout from the action here this weekend of the Mello Yello 300. We're going to take another quick timeout, and we'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody, and the man with the umbrella there is trying to stay cool. Some of the others have erected slightly larger sun shields over themselves, but everyone, you can tell, is trying to find the little piece of shade while they wait for the track crew to extract Rick Miller from the car. Of course, as you said, Rob Albright, erring on the side of caution. Who would second guess anyone hiding behind the notion that the safest thing to do is to stop the race and cut the roof off the car and pull Rick Miller out of there with as little movement as possible?
We were being told unofficially that he was conscious after the impact. Of course, initially he was unconscious. That's always a good sign, and we'll not speculate beyond that. As soon as we have something official, we'll certainly pass it along to you. And the backboard is now underneath him, and he will be taken out of the race car.
Let's go down to Ralph Shaheen for some updates among the leaders, and of course he is with Tony Raines.
Look how beat up the side of this clean burn machine of Tony Raines is. The right side pretty beat up, a lot of scuff marks there, just as many on the left side. Looks like it's been a rough day out there on the fiberglass body panels of this car. Tony, how's it been on you?
I'm doing real good. It's tight racing here. A couple times I got in there where I thought it could be a good pass, and they didn't see me, or maybe I was trying too hard. I don't know, but so far everything's been holding up real well. We're just going to see what we can do after this restart.
Well, it sure looks like Howie's giving you a good car, but you got one of the best road racers in the business right behind you. What's the strategy now? Do you have enough tires? Do you have enough fuel? And do you have enough energy left to hold off Terry Labonte?
Well, I got plenty of energy. I don't know. You know, Terry's got. You know, it'd be really neat to hold him off, and we're going to do our best.
Sandy?
I'm over here right now with Terry Labonte. He's out of the car, taking a little break here. Boy, you've been behind Tony Raines, just battling it out. Do you have what it takes to get around him when we get going again?
I don't know. I was glad they had a little break here. I hope the guy's okay over there, but I was needing a Coke. It was getting awful hot out there. So let's let our tires cool off and everything. And we got a little ways to go, but our car's pretty good.
Well, we're looking at the front end of your car, the hood here. I don't know if you want to take a look, but it's a mess. Looks like you got a lot of fluid. We were looking at the front panel. Got grass on the grill, you know, that kind of thing. Terry, want to ask you, is the car handling okay? Is any of this affecting the intake? Engine's okay, not overheating or anything?
No, it's running good. Temperatures look good, everything, and you know, it's just really hard to pass. And Tony up there is running really good, and his car is really strong. So I got up beside him there once, getting in one there, and decided I better wait a little bit. But I don't know, we're pretty even. It's going to be tough to beat.
Okay, let's go on down pit road to Ralph Shaheen. He's with Bob Seneca.
Bob, this car was very strong early on, and now you sit back in third. Any changes to it?
It's not quite as comfortable as I wanted it to be. The first part of the race was pretty good, but slipping and sliding a little bit. Some other guys are really tough. It's going to be tough to win this one from where I am. I hope I can hang on. Maybe I'll get a break and go to the front. We don't know.
You got a pushed in right front quarter panel here just in front of that tire. Has that been causing you any problems?
One of my brake ducts is busted now, and I'm having a little trouble with the brakes, so I got to be a little more careful going in the corner. That's what's slowing me down right now. It's handling all right, but just kind of concerned about the brakes.
How about Bob Seneca? How's he holding up?
Well, this red flag makes me feel pretty good.
Sandy?
Well, I'm over here with Glenn Allen Jr. He's slowly but surely just been weaving his way through the pack. He's now in fourth position, I believe, behind Bob Seneca. What did you do to get there? It looks like you pitted an extra time compared to Tony Raines. Is this part of your strategy?
Well, no, early in the race we wanted just to make one stop, and the car was a little loose, and we wanted to tighten the car up and really get it good. We knew we wanted to stop halfway and go the distance instead of pitting, you know, with 20 or 30 to go. So we pitted early, getting the stagger right. If the stagger didn't cure it, we were going to make a chassis adjustment when everybody else pitted. So it just worked out good for us. You know, the Eaglewood Construction, CarQuest Auto Parts Pontiac's running good. We're giving Bob a good run. We're working on him out on the backside. Front straightaway here, he's working on us a little bit. So I was hoping we could just keep going till the end, because we was trying to pressure him, and hopefully the old guy gets tired. But looks like he's going to get a refreshment. So.
Talking about refreshment, I can't let this fashion statement go here. Hot out there?
Well, it's hot. I feel really good, and emotionally and everything else, where I'm not going to pass out. I'm just getting kind of chilly where inside the car's hot. I got an open face helmet. Most guys got the full face helmet with air duct where they're pumping in cool air or dry ice or something like that. There's no cool air out here, so I'm just ducking in hot air into the face, and I'm just on fire in my face and everything else. But overall, we're okay.
Okay, let's go now to Ralph.
Thanks, Sandy. Well, Scott Lagacy is out of the car over here. He's talking to his car owner, Ken Schrader. And Scott, obviously, it looks like your feet are burning up a little bit now. Schrader, you were showing him something that you've always done for years with your shoes to help keep you cool. How's this work?
Just when you got one of the meltdowns, you just take a knee pad and stick your toe through there and get that on your heel, and it'll get you through it.
Scott, how bad is it in the car?
Oh, it's not too bad.
It's a little warm. I hated to get Kenny out of the trailer, though, boy, I tell you what. He's up there in the AC watching on the satellite dish, enjoying the TNN broadcast. So this is going to be bad, this red flag. I'm going to have to pay for this one.
This crew, I tell you, I've never seen a crew anywhere in racing that jokes around with each other more than Schrader's a bunch.
What a job. Ralph Shaheen and Sandy Heng just covering pit road from one end to the other. A couple of thoughts that occurred to me in watching all that. Of course, the fashion statement of Glenn of Arabia there with a towel on his head. That can't go unspoken about. For Tony Raines with his car just beat up, scarred up, black marks on both sides of it. Well, another day at the office for an ASA driver, I would have to say, as we run down the entire field here with 24 laps to go. Any thoughts from your end of the bench here?
I kind of picked up on Bob Seneca's comment, maybe we can get a break here and go to the front. Well, for those of you who missed our last telecast, which is on another network, Bob Seneca had no better than a third-place car behind Brad Loney, who was dominant at his home track of Cedar Rapids, and Mike Eddy, who had raced hard all race long. The two came together going into turn number 1 late in the going, and suddenly Seneca found himself in victory lane. Now, I don't know that he can be that fortunate 2 races in a row, but if anybody could, it would be him. You saw the Lifeline helicopter, and apparently they're going to go take Rick Miller to a hospital and take a little closer look. Again, we have no updated information. Unofficially, we were told he was initially unconscious and then had regained consciousness. We saw the backboard go under, and they extricated him from the race car after cutting the top of it off. That's always a safety precaution. So as soon as we know more, we'll certainly be willing to let you know.
We have also seen that every time that has happened, that the injuries have been less severe than they might have appeared. We're going to once again cut away here as we get ready to resume racing in the Mello Yello 300. We're not quite there yet, but maybe we will be when you come back. Yeehaw! We're getting ready to get back into action here, and as we pan up towards the front of the field, you will see the number 87 car of Tony Raines. There's Terry Labonte's number 14 running in second spot. And they're getting ready to fire him back up here at the racetrack in just a little bit. But we're going to go once again down to pit road. Just before they do, here's Ralph Shaheen.
Well, Brian, according to our scores upstairs, if you stay right where you are, you will be the points leader at the end of the day. How will that change your strategy?
Well, we wanted to run smooth all day, and we just want to finish this race and be there at the end. So we're going to give her everything we can.
We got to let him go right now, too. He's got to go racing.
Some really good news. We've just been told as we went to break that, yes, Rick Miller is conscious and coherent in the helicopter. They are going to check him out, make sure there are no broken bones, but that is good news. There's Glenn Allen's car number 15, that Eaglewood construction machine, and the Sheik of ASA. Maybe that'll be a new nickname for Glenn. We haven't had a good nickname lately, the Sheik of ASA. We do want to recognize some folks who were here this weekend, did not make the show. Doug Mayer, who we mentioned, crashed and was injured in practice yesterday. Brett Bell, who has been struggling as a rookie driver in ASA, talented young man, lost an engine and wasn't able to compete. Greg Freed, Sam Gottwald, Tim Kesman, Billy Turner, Omar Weber, Bob Derstowitz, and Carol Adamy all missed the show this weekend.
Well, if they call Glenn Allen Jr. the Sheik, that'll just be added on to the nickname. His dad, Glenn Allen Sr., they call him the mayor here in ASA, so I don't know.
Well,
we may be inventing something here that'll stick. Who
but
knows?
he is. Glenn Allen Sr., the little town. I don't know if he still is. He was. He may still be, but the little town of the suburb of Cincinnati, he's the mayor, or was. So I guess you should call the mayor, wouldn't you?
Well, the race cars are moving again out on the racetrack, and we would expect that when they come around again, the green flag may wave. Coming up on the ASA 1995 schedule here on TNN, August 27th, it's the Badgerland 150 at the Milwaukee Mile. September 10th, the Wisconsin 300 at a new racetrack for us anyway, at Kaukauna, Wisconsin. And it's back to Toledo for the Toledo 400 on October 1st. So mark those dates on your calendar to join us here on TNN.
I don't know about you. I'm looking forward to going to Kaukauna. Most of you race fans are probably not familiar with that track, but it's a track that Scott Hansen and the great late Alan Kowicki and a number of our drivers who hail from Wisconsin, and that constitutes probably 20% of our ASA regulars, have done a lot of laps there. And it is an oval, but slightly D-shaped oval. And people say it's about as competitive as Grand Rapids. And we always have great races at that Berlin Raceway just outside of Grand Rapids in the little town of Marne, Michigan. So we're looking forward to that for the first time for these ASA troops.
Well, there are actually 6 Wisconsin drivers out of the 44 present at the start of this race who hailed from 18 states. And that information, of course, just part of the veritable litany of facts that we get from the know-it-all brothers at the start of this race. We have 3 of them with us here this weekend. We have Torch, Craig Miller, we have Scorch, Mike's with us, and Porch, Terry's joined us for the weekend as well. So, man, if we didn't think we knew it all, we know more than all now.
Absolutely. Well, the AC-Delco Challenge Series pace car now brings the field out of turn number 10. They'll remain under caution this time by the start-finish line, but I'm sure the next time by we'll be racing 24 laps to go now to the checkered flag. There's still a fair amount of time for Terry Labonte, Bob Seneca, Glenn Allen Jr., or Scott Lagasse to make a charge and maybe put Tony Raines back a spot or two. But he's going to be tough to pass.
We would expect a couple of minutes, minute 10, minute and 8 and change is what the qualifying times were here. In fact, the pole position won by Bob Seneca at 108.705, 94 miles an hour plus. The old track record, 108.833, was held by Butch Miller, and of course went down in this year's qualifying by Bob Seneca in spite of the extremely hot conditions, which you would expect would slow the cars down a little bit. So a couple of minutes to get around the racetrack under caution, and then we'll be back to racing laps here. We're at 80. We expect to see 24 to go when they come by.
You know, a name that we haven't mentioned a whole lot, you can just see him there flashing through the corner, was Darrell Waltrip's car number 17. He's been just in and out of the top 10. Not a real factor here through much of the day. Not what we expected. There he is in that Western Auto Chevrolet. That's the Lumina body card. We thought we might see him in a Monte Carlo, but opting for the Lumina here this weekend just really hasn't been up to his usual standards. I think he thought he had a real good shot at making it 2 in a row here at Topeka. Hasn't worked out that way today.
The cars with the hoods off. They're including the number 53 of Scott Hansen and the number 7 wins Port City Ford Thunderbird of Gary Sanaman. Hoodless, trying to keep the engine bay cooled down a little bit more than it might otherwise. Some of the cars much more intact. We have seen overheating, not real overheating problems, but perhaps precautionary measures taken by a lot of the crews. Every time those cars come in, they get the grass off the grills. Out of the final turn, where all that rubber's been kicked up over the last 80 laps, to get the green flag from Roger Slack. 81 laps into the event right now, so 23 remain in the Mello Yello 300.
Tony Raines leads them into turn number 1, that left-hand bend, a relatively high-speed corner. And he'll then go through a short straight into turn number 2, another left-hand bend. Again, 70% of the corners are left-hand turns. What a story. Glenn Allen Jr. now pressuring Bob Seneca. What a story is Terry Labonte's ride, because this is not just an ASA car that they've rented. This is a car actually, we understand, built in the Hendrick Motorsport shops. That is a disadvantage when you're coming to a series for the first time. This is Terry's first start here. And now he has got a problem. Terry Labonte apparently with a problem. He's dropped 2nd and now 3rd position. As you said, you know, you kind of made the gesture here in the booth. He might have missed a shift. I'm not sure, Brian. He's now back up at speed, and it looks like that very well may have been the case.
That's the only thing I can think of quickly there. And, of course, we may find out there's something different. But he was in the S's there where they're rowing the cars through the turns using the shifter. And it appeared as though he just missed a shift, faded quickly, lost 2 spots. And now Bob Seneca and Glenn Allen Jr. will be tussling for 2nd place. And Tony Raines, this may work to his advantage to a certain extent, because Labonte didn't seem to have a whole lot for the number 87 car. And Bob Seneca, by his own admission, is not running as well as he was early in the race. Raines may be able to run off and hide here now. Labonte fading back just a little bit after, we think, missing a shift in the backstretch.
I'll tell you, that almost prophetic old guy, Bob Seneca, said catch a break or 2. Well, he's got his first one. Now all he needs is another one. Glenn Allen, all of a sudden now is in a contending position, and he has to think, if I can get around. And we've got Scott Lagasse hard into the wall. And we saw Jay Sauter taking evasive action. Kenny Schrader's AC-Delco car number 52, the Monte Carlo, very, very hard into the wall. But, you know, that's a better way to hit, is on the nose than it is on the door bars. Jay Sauter was off and now back on the racetrack, and the right rear tire is down on car number 1.
Well, we saw Scott Lagasse sitting on the wall there with the Schrader crew in a moment of levity there during the red flag, and now things have turned much more serious for the substitute driver in the 52 machine of Kenny Schrader. Scott Lagasse, and there is the crew. They've been watching, of course, on the telecast. There's Kenny Schrader watching now, and anxiously as we are to see some signs of movement in that cockpit out of Scott Lagasse.
And standing there also was Rick Hendrick, the owner of the Terry Labonte and Kenny Schrader Winston Cup cars. And we can see Lagasse is moving around in the car. He was talking to safety personnel. That is always a good sign, of course.
Well, you can see there's much less urgency, and they're just now simply motioning for the cars to stay wide. Let's take a look at the replay here. We saw a little bit of a wiggle out of the 52 car prior to it going off course. Let's see if we can pick up on any more.
Now, he was running in 5th position behind Terry Labonte, just out of frame. You can see, I think that is Jay Sauter, is it not, that is running through the grass in car number 1. And there is Scott Lagacy's, Gary St. Amant. I saw the black back in, and it was Gary St. Amant's car number 7 that had gone off track. Now, St. Amant was running a couple of spots behind Lagacy. You can see Gary sliding off, and it almost appeared that maybe Gary was trying to make a pass on Scott as they hit hard. And Jay got a little squirrely, and he clipped, it looked like, with his right rear, the left front corner of Lagacy's car number 52.
Let's go down to Ralph Shaheen with some observation while we ponder what happened up here.
Well, we're with Kenny Schrader. Kenny, did Scott radio into you right away? Is he okay?
Yeah, Scott, he wasn't quite done turning, spinning around yet, and he called up, said he was fine.
Looked like he took a pretty hard hit, so he's out of this one. We also wanted to update you on the Terry Labonte entry. Terry radioed into his dad and said the car just hung up in gear there for half a second. So that's the story for Terry Labonte.
Well, he didn't miss a shift, but the effect was the same. The car wouldn't go into gear, and he was forced to fight the shifter a little bit there. So we were close, and I'd have to say Scott Lagacy coming out of the car there is certainly a good sign. Just real quick first impression as I looked at that, it appeared as though Lagacy was on the outside there and got nudged just a tiny bit. That St. Amant was the first one to go off the racetrack, and then it appeared as though Sauter got kind of nudged from behind, causing him to go off the track. Maybe we'll take another look at that. Maybe we won't. In any case, Sauter continues to move around the track. Gary St. Amant continues. The missing hood was from having been removed voluntarily, and the rest of the field getting on to the home stretch right now and waiting for the race to resume.
That will impact the point standings as well, as Gary St. Amant came into this race third in the point standings. So that's, you know, he's dropped several positions as a result of this incident. My first thought was, oh, gee, I hope we haven't had another altercation between Scott Lagacy and Jay Sauter, because they were battling for the lead last year when they tangled it. I think Jay was just kind of a little bit of the aftermath of the incident between St. Amant and Lagacy.
We're going to go for another pause in the relative lack of action here, as we sometimes put it, with yet another question posed by Jack Flowers of Speedway Scene. We'll come back with the answer right after this.
This question comes from Robbie Brooks in Charlotte, North Carolina. The very famous restaurant in Charlotte, Sandwich Construction Company, where all the NASCAR people eat. Robbie would like to know if the ASA people eat at Sandwich Construction too.
Hi, I'm Brandon Sperling. I drive the number 51 Ultra Custom Wheel Chevrolet, and I eat at Sandwich Construction all the time.
I'm Brad Loney, driver of the number 33 Winnebago Flex Steel Industries H&W Motor Express Chevrolet. And whenever I make the Charlotte, the first place I go to eat is Sandwich Construction.
Now that I make my home in Charlotte, North Carolina, the Sandwich Construction Company is just about an everyday kind of thing. Whether you're an ASA fan or any other kind of racing fan, it is the place to eat. There's plenty of ASA memorabilia hanging on the walls, including championship helmets from Mike Eddy, body panels from Johnny Benson's old number 21. Lots of stuff, great food. The Sandwich is the place to go if you're an ASA fan.
Well, Brian, you live in Atlanta. I live in Naples, Florida, but I'm thinking about maybe moving to Charlotte in the not-too-distant future. Guess where I'm going to eat lunch? Sounds like everybody eats there.
Well, please invite me to go along with you, because apparently I don't have enough pull to get a reservation there. I've not been able to get in the door of the place yet. So let's go down once again to Ralph Shaheen, and he's with Scott Lagacy, who is apparently very much okay.
And has made his way back to the pit. Scotty, all right?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm okay. This car doesn't look so good in the left front corner, though.
Tell me what happened.
Well, we've been having an ignition problem about the last 20 laps back there before the red, and it cut out in turn 1 that time at the end of the straightaway, and then coming back up off the corner, and one or two of the cars behind me got a run on the inside, and we made it to turn 3 or turn 2, and same thing, and motor just shut off. I tried to get out of the way, even got the right sides off the track, and you know, just slow going chicane. We're just kind of a moving target out there, and one of the cars cut back across when I was trying to get back on the track. So bad day for Kenny's car, that's sure.
Scott Lagacy's day is done, but at least he's okay.
Well, just the slightest trace of a smile from Scott Lagacy, who Ralph said was among those rather humorous crew there of Kenny Schrader. We're here at the Mello Yello 300. The 1995 AC-Delco Challenge Series on TNN is brought to you in part By Win Oil Company, makers of quality automotive car care products. Remember, when it's wins, it works. By your GM Goodwrench service dealer. We want your business. By Just for Men Gel, for that hard-to-color gray in mustaches and beards. And by Pep Boys Automotive Supercenters. The crowd anticipating the final 18 laps as it stands right now of this 104-lap event. Tony Raines in the Clean Burn Enterprises Pontiac out front. Baker Enterprises Clean Burn, I should say. And once again, the wide track Pontiac ad campaign of, I think it was the 60s, might be very much in evidence here for these final 18 laps, as Bob Seneca now will be the one to try to challenge the leader, Tony Raines, and perhaps pressure him into making a mistake.
I don't know. I don't know. Tony's looked like the man of the hour today. And there is Darrell Waltrip, who had moved into 5th position. He now has lost 5th to car number 5, Brian Refner. So those drivers have been the beneficiary of the problems of a couple of others as they charge their way up into contention.
Pressure of the utmost kind is coming in this particular little group of cars from Glenn Allen Jr., Chic Allen, we should say, against Bob Seneca. Glenn is really putting the heat on Bob Seneca, number 84. We heard him say that he was hoping they could have kept going, and that, in his words, the old guy might get tired. But I don't know about that. Bob Seneca is a pretty tough old guy, if you even want to call him that.
He's tough. He's not that old. He just seems old because he's been around the doggone series for so long.
And won, what, 74 races in ASA?
Yeah, by far the most of any driver. Mike Eddy is about 30 behind him, and then it's Butch Miller and Dick Trickle and a whole lot of other well-known names like Mark Martin. But Seneca, in the early days of ASA, was invincible. Still one of the guys to beat. And here comes Terry Labonte charging back alongside Glenn Allen Jr. Again, it looks like he may have a little bit of a horsepower advantage down this long straight.
Well, after having a momentary transmission problem, he has regained 3rd place. He had been challenging for the lead, and now Glenn Allen Jr. is forced to do battle behind Terry Labonte. Brian Refner just kind of patiently watching things go. And how many times have we seen, well, here we have car number 5 in 5th place. That happens every time, it seems like, where the car number and the place on the racetrack seem to match.
Who's going to win this race, Brian? What do you think?
I don't know. I like Tony Raines. If that car is going to stay together, and we would have to expect that Howie Leddow and the crew have done a super job in preparing the car in only the whims of luck. But he is showing a lot of power as he's able to pull away from Bob Seneca on the straightaway. Seneca was doing that to everybody else early in the race. Raines is looking strong, and in the qualifying race, we should say, we saw him driving mighty wide and holding everybody else off for a win in the qualifier.
Ted Smokestad off course in car number 32, another one of the rookie drivers in that Red Dog Super America Chevrolet back on course, and he'll continue around the racetrack. You know, Tony has not been known until this year as a road race driver, but it just proves one thing. You can have all the talent in the world, and if you haven't got a car underneath you that handles on a road course, you're not going to win, and you're not going to convince people that you're that great a road racer. Ralph had said that Mike Eddy, just trying to get the car figured out, he thinks he's a capable enough driver with trying to figure out the handle on getting a car set up for a road course. And obviously Howie Leddow's an expert at it, and that's why Tony Raines, with the skills, you match the skills with the car, and you got a winning combination.
Well, Howie Leddow has said to us, of course, that Tony Raines is such an astute young man that the feedback and the communication, it took them a while to get that communication path opened at the beginning of this season, but now they are really mind melding, to use a Star Trek expression, and they're able to communicate exactly what Tony needs to the crew chief. The crew chief able to tell Tony what he's doing to the car and how he can expect it to react.
Terry Labonte momentarily alongside Bob Seneca, but rather than wreck the guy that's racing for points, he decided that discretion was the rule of the moment and settles back into 3rd position. But Tony Raines absolutely has to love what's going on behind him, as he's now open an 8 or 10 car length advantage. If Terry Labonte's able to get around, getting by Bob Seneca is, you know, the first task, then catching Tony would be second. Even if he caught him, I'm not sure he could get by unless Tony would make a mistake.
Well, there's Darrell Waltrip, who has thrown himself back into the fray here, and we're seeing Tony Raines just absolutely able to outdistance everybody. We saw Labonte pull out into what he thought might be the passing lane, thought better of it, ducked back into the draft behind Seneca, and Glenn Allen Jr. there with Brian Refner pressuring him.
And Joe Knott has come slowly onto pit road in car number 48. The young man ranked 10th in the points, the youngest of all ASA regulars. Looks like his afternoon is done.
Ralph Shaheen with a comment on the number 17 car and Terry Labonte.
To update you on Terry Labonte a little bit, Brian, that car was not built at Hendrick Racing. It was actually built at Labonte Racing, which is just outside of Charlotte. Terry's father, Bob, doing all the work. It's a team that is owned by Terry and his brother, Bobby, and they plan on owning this car and keeping it. If either one of the two Labonte brothers or David Green, who drives for Bobby, decide that they want to enter another ASA race in the near future, they will have a car ready to go. It is a Port City chassis. Now, the Coca-Cola sponsorship came out of the Hendrick deal. Coca-Cola is an associate sponsor with the Hendrick organization, and we'll see that Coca-Cola label on Hendrick-supported cars in the near future.
Well, I can kind of echo what Ralph was just saying. I happen to be kind of hanging around down there by Bob Seneca and Mike Miller's little area there, and Mike Eddy, the three of them kind of in the paddock area alongside. And Bob Labonte came down to visit, paid a visit there to Bob Seneca and some of the guys. And that's exactly what he said. He said, no, we got this car in case my boys want to go ASA racing. Well, we got a car sitting there ready for them to go.
Of course, there are two well-known chassis builders in ASA. There are a lot of lesser known, but Port City and Johnny Benson carried their standard for a lot of years. Glenn Allen Jr. and a lot of the other drivers now drive cars built at Port City. And Mike Eddy, for years, has been the standard bearer for Howe Racing Enterprises. Those are the two principal chassis builders. So if you start with good pieces to begin with, it's easy to, easier. It makes it easier when you're doing something that's unknown to add the other components. And I'm sure they've gotten a lot of information from ASA headquarters and probably have talked to a number of the other drivers as they got this car set up for this weekend.
Terry Labonte and Bob Seneca nose to tail there, but some 8 or 9 car lengths behind Tony Raines, the leader. We're going to take another cut away from the action here for some very important commercial messages and go to the conclusion when we come back. Heartland Park in Topeka, Kansas is the site of the Mello Yello 300. We are in the final 11 laps of this race right now with Tony Raines out in front. Bob Seneca and Terry Labonte and Glenn Allen Jr. and Brian Refner are the ones that are chasing him. Tony Raines in the number 87 Baker Enterprises clean burn Pontiac has led for quite a while now and continues to do so. Here's a move on the inside there, and it looks as though Bob Seneca is going to give up a spot to Glenn Allen Jr. Nice move.
Actually gave up a couple of spots. In the previous turn, Labonte made the move, and Glenn Allen saw the open door, took advantage, and moved into third position. Now Labonte's going to have to hustle. Tony Raines has a significant advantage as the handle is definitely going away for Bob Seneca's Johnsonville Lane Automotive Ford as Refner goes by, and here comes Darrell Waltrip alongside also.
Well, it's late in the race, and this is not unlike an NBA game where the fourth quarter is what counts. We're getting close to the final 10 laps, and while everybody else might have been pretty much trying to maintain the status quo, now's the time to go racing. Glenn Allen Jr. going after it with Terry Labonte in turn number 10. Bob Seneca trying to get around the 02 car there, and that is Pat Patterson driving the Tony's Pizza entry this weekend.
And now Seneca falls back into the clutches momentarily of Butch Miller, who has acclimated himself to the controls of Scott Hansen's car number 53, has moved up to 7th position, and is really as fast perhaps as anybody on the racetrack with the exception of Tony Raines. And now Terry Labonte's got to hustle. He doesn't have much time to go. He needs a caution flag. That's the last thing that Tony Raines wants to see. If this thing goes to green and car number 87 hangs together, nobody's going to catch Tony, I don't think.
Meanwhile, some real fine racing going on there with Terry Labonte and now Glenn Allen Jr. And into the wall here is the wins entry. The Port City Ford Thunderbird of Gary St. Amant is down there into the barricades. Gary, who had had a pretty shaky start to this Mello Yello 300 and had moved his way back up, is moving around inside the car. But they are signaling that he is not in the best shape. And now they're running over there to attend to Gary St. Amant. We do see him moving around inside the car. And there is the caution flag that we just talked about. We would expect, well, we haven't seen it yet, actually, because Gary is so far off the racetrack, they have not yet waved a caution.
Well, we can see that car number 07, Todd Forbes, who had a great run today, we really haven't given him much of a call in that Noah Yoder-owned automobile, the Maisto machine. The full course yellow is out, and I know we're going to remain yellow for quite a while at this, the way things look. Gary St. Amant's car actually looked much worse than did either the Scott Legacy machine or the Rick Miller car.
Let's take another look here, if we can, at Gary St. Amant. There's a very clear view, and he just gets loose there under braking and tried to collect it back. Then, of course, the traction not going to be what he needs there in the grass. Around he goes.
Boy, I'll tell you, that car just does not slow down, and Gary hits driver's door first, and that is boy, that's an incredibly hard impact coming off turn number 1.
And we have seen virtually no driver door impacts throughout the entire season of the American Speed Association AC-Delco Challenge Series. And this weekend, not only in the ASA race, but in the Super Truck race yesterday, that has been the norm rather than the exception. It seems like every car that goes around, there's 360 degrees of rotation, and they pick that exact point to impact on the driver's side door.
I think that's the hardest impact I've seen of an ASA automobile in probably half a dozen years, if not longer. An incredibly hard hit for Gary Sanaman. I don't know if we've ever gotten a radar gun on the terminal velocity of these cars at the end of the straightaway, but it has to be somewhere around 140 or 150 miles an hour. Really hard hit.
Sandy Hang on pit road with a comment about the number 7 car and its driver.
Well, I just talked to Gary Sanaman's crew. They're huddled around the TV screen looking at what happened. They said before the incident, the car was handling just fine, so they don't know what happened.
Well, it obviously was a brake problem of some sort, whether the brakes just grabbed and locked or whether he put the pedal down and he suddenly didn't have anything. It's pretty hard to tell, but it obviously was a brake failure going into turn number 1. It's a fairly high-speed corner.
Not sure whether it was a failure or a malfunction or whether he just braked too hard and just got in too hot. I mean, it is, again, late. These guys are getting tired. It's hot. They're having to race harder now than they have throughout any of the early part of this race because, well, it's time to do so. And that could be a contributing factor as well. Let's go to Ralph Shaheen on pit road again.
Brakes might be a good call there, Brian, because we've seen that on numerous cars, including that one right there, the number 1 of Jay Sauter's having brake problems here today. In fact, Bob Seneca, who you were reporting on earlier, was slipping back. He was slipping back because he had no brakes left.
We're going to have an opportunity to take another peek as Ted Smokestad's car number 32 goes slowly down the racetrack. And again, we'll watch Gary Sanaman's entrance to turn number 1. Watch the left side of your screen. There it is, the black and orange. Look at the car fishtailing. You could see the rear brakes were definitely locked. It looks like he's pumping the brakes because the rear wheels were rolling and then they'd lock and then they rolled and then they locked. Gary was doing everything he could just as you're supposed to do, and that is when the thing's out of control, you're pumping those brakes. And boy, what an impact.
Maybe the fronts went out on him. Of course, those are the ones that work the hardest on a race car, on a motorcycle, or just about anything. That's where all the weight gets transferred. The front brakes taking a beating here. That could be the failure that Gary Sanaman experienced. In any case, the crew is over there attending to him, and we will take a break. Here's a look at the standings with 8 laps to go in the race. The good news immediately that we want to pass along to you is that the track crew is talking to Gary Sanaman and that he is responding. So that's the good news. As we look at the top 20 here, 8 laps remain. Of course, the race up front has been quite spirited throughout this entire event. We have seen several lead changes, but right now Tony Raines has pretty much owned the racetrack here at Heartland Park, Topeka. There's the crew working and attending to Gary Sanaman in the number 7 Port City Wins Ford Thunderbird.
He still remains in the race car. They'll talk to him and kind of make an assessment of what potential injuries he may have. But boy, that's awfully good news to know that he is communicating with the ASA officials and the SCCA officials on the scene. Make a determination whether or not, again, we're going to see the jaws of life cutting the top off a race car. We've just seen that way too many times this weekend.
It really has been kind of an unusual situation where the race, both the Super Truck race on Saturday and now our race here today in the American Speed Association Heartland Park Mello Yello 300 has been stopped, absolutely red flagged, in order to remove a driver from the car. Now, that may seem very serious, but again, as we have said before, the end result has been that the driver has come out of the race car, been checked out at the hospital, and the injuries were not nearly as severe as what the reaction by the track crews and all the stoppage would have warranted. But who's going to argue with erring on the side of safety? Certainly not I.
Yeah, and of course, just again to update you on yesterday's hard impact for Doug Mayer, he did sustain a broken collarbone, a broken elbow, some cracked ribs, but he is going to be okay. For Kerry Teague, the Super Truck driver that also was airlifted out after being removed with the jaws of life, he was, we understand, after regaining consciousness later on back at the racetrack with, I'm sure, a really bad headache. Rick Miller, who was injured earlier today, was at first on the scene unconscious, then regained consciousness, was taken out by helicopter, and I think that was probably as much precautionary for Rick as anything else. Then it was Scott Lagacy who took a hard hit after having an errant, apparently either a fuel pickup problem or an engine problem, because the thing he said was cutting out and then it'd get going again, and he got tagged and spun and hit the wall pretty hard. And now Gary Sanaman, who was solidly running in the top 10.
Well, the cars are circling the track slowly, of course, counting down the laps up until a point where we will be In that last green flag situation for American Speed Association, we won't finish under caution. If you're already looking ahead to the next race here on TNN, once again, August 27th, the Milwaukee Mile and the Badgerland 150. And then a few weeks later, the Wisconsin 300 at a new track in Kaukauna, Wisconsin, and Toledo, Ohio, where we have seen some great races here over the years.
Of course, there will be a couple of ASA races in between. And Gary, good news, is getting out of the car, we understand, with some assistance. Got a neck brace on him, again, just to be cautious, and he is talking to the officials again. But I started to say we've got 2 races between now and our next televised race here on TNN. We go back to the half mile at Berlin Raceway in Grand Rapids, Michigan, which is the home of a lot of drivers like Johnny Benson and Butch Miller, who've been some ASA superstars, and it's a place where Mike Eddy loves to go and get food, but always runs well there and often wins there. Then we go to the quarter mile at Anderson Speedway, a high bank quarter mile racetrack, and then to the mile at Milwaukee. So they go from a road course to a half mile to a quarter mile to a mile. Most versatile stock cars in the country. These are the ones. And we're winding this thing down. We've got 98 laps complete. Brian, there's just 6 laps to go in this race. I'm sure they're going to have Gary's car off the racetrack in time to finish this race under green. And for those of you not familiar with ASA racing rules, we never finish a race under caution. You will see a race to the finish. So Tony Raines will not inherit it. He's going to have to earn a victory over Terry Labonte, Glenn Allen Jr., and who knows who else.
Well, the good news, not only because Gary Saint-Amant climbed out of the car under his own power, is that, well, that's good news in and of itself, but that we will not have to stop the race to remove him from the car. So we will be back, and we expect to resume racing here very shortly. And when we do, you can guarantee it is going to be a good one. Tony Raines continues to lead, but the challenge is there. We're back. The lights are still on in the pace car. The word is they may leave Gary Saint-Amant's car where it is. Apparently it's far enough out of harm's way, or potential harm's way, that they're not going to deal with taking it off the race, well, off the field surrounding the racetrack. Gary did make a pretty good run once he left the pavement to get to that barrier wall down there, and when he got there, he hit it pretty hard, but he is okay and out of the car.
Some of the cars in the pack just outside the top 10. You can see Todd Forbes' car number 07 was in the top 10, but made a stop on pit road. And there's Gary Saint-Amant's wins car number 7 that was running in the top 10, appeared to be heading Gary to a good finish and maybe a bump up in the point standings. Might have even made his way around Mike Eddy. I don't know, depending on how things shook out when it was over. But that car is now going to kind of sit hopeless and helpless to the finish of this race. 99 of 104 laps complete. ASA rules call for the last 3 laps, or just a little under 6 miles, will be run under green flag conditions. So if we reach lap number 101 and remain under caution, the lap count will stop and we would resume it at that point, once we went back to green, of course.
The AC-Delco pace car, Danny behind the wheel there, and the field lined up behind Tony Raines. A couple of things come to mind immediately here, some short range, some long. Tony Raines, of course, had worked out to a fairly substantial lead, probably 10, 12 car lengths at least, over his challengers. The other thing is that Brian Refner, in terms of the point standings, appears to be the young man in the catbird seat right now. We heard Ralph say that if he stayed right where he was, he would end up the points leader at the end of this race. And, well, he has done that and more. He is currently running it for the 3rd place, I believe, or 4th on the racetrack. There are a few lapped cars mixed in among the leaders.
The amber light on the deck lid of the Chevrolet Z28 Camaro remains on. We'll expect to see it go off this time as he crosses the start-finish line, if we're to go back to green. And yes, that's exactly what did happen. So next lap, we'll complete lap number 101. We'll run 3 laps to the checkered flag. You know, if you were Tony Raines, there are a lot of guys you would not want behind you on the restart. One guy that I'm not sure he's maybe too concerned about is Terry Labonte, because if there's one thing that Terry has as a reputation, it's being a very clean, aggressive, but clean racer. And I think Terry well recognizes, yes, he'd like to win this race, but he also knows that some of these drivers are in a points chase, and he's probably not going to jeopardize it. You know, there are a lot of people that wouldn't give that any thought, but I think Terry probably does take that into consideration.
Well, that would be a very admirable thing, and I think a lot of people, and I would be the first in line to do so, would give him as much credit for finishing 2nd behind Tony and not trying to take them both out as I would for actually winning the race and perhaps jeopardizing the chances of Tony Raines of finishing this race where he is and moving up in the point standings. Tony suffering from early season problems in the standings here and has not really been a contender in the points competition so far, but he has really begun to put his program back together. He's all the way down in 9th and nearly 300 points out of 1st. This will certainly move him up in the standings, as it will Brian Refner. With Mike Eddy out early, Refner will probably be, and again we say probably only because this race isn't over yet, the new points leader.
We'll see if Terry Labonte tries to make his move on the restart. Tony Raines has had a very fast car off turn 10, and let's see as they'll fan out coming off turn number 10. Watch the jockeying for position. Everybody stays pretty much in line. And if Labonte's going to make his move, it'll be near the end of this long straightaway.
Well, he's probably trying to just stay in the draft, because consistently Raines has shown the ability to run off and hide under acceleration. He didn't do it this time. Labonte stayed very close indeed. And now the race gets even more interesting, because Labonte's strength has been in the infield part of the race course. He, by far, the more experienced of the two that are racing for the lead right now.
But the experienced chassis man is on pit road for Tony Raines. That, of course, is Howie Leddow, who turned the wrenches for a number of Rookie of the Year drivers in ASA, and has turned the wrenches for racing veterans like Scott Hansen and guided him to victories. And I think this just may be the first of what may be a lot of wins to come for Tony Raines and Howie Leddow as a combination. A lot of folks expected great things right out of the starting gate. They were slow in coming, but they are really putting their program in shape.
Ralph Shaheen with some thoughts on Terry Labonte. Ralph?
Well, Rob, I think might have hit it on the head there, Brian, because Terry Labonte has struggled to dial in this chassis all weekend long. And a big tip of the hat to Bob Labonte and the crew. They have struggled and fought hard to get this car to run as well as it is here today. But Howie Leddow definitely is the chassis master when it comes to road courses. If that evens out, then it becomes, where does the experience lie?
Well, we just saw another great example of Tony Raines getting the jump out of the final turn and onto the straightaway. He was able to accelerate noticeably quicker than Labonte. Labonte, though, tucking into the draft and minimizing the loss of real estate there as they go into the backstretch part of the course. Another thing, Rob Albright, a question I'll ask and perhaps answer myself with your help, and that is, will Terry Labonte pressure Tony Raines into making a mistake? He is the younger driver. My answer is I don't think so, for a couple of reasons. Tony has shown a lot of consistency and level-headedness over the years. The other thing is Tony just doesn't get real excited about much.
Yeah, his personality reminds me so much of a Bob Seneca. He's unflappable in and out of the race car. No matter what happens, his emotions are always totally under control. I think one time I saw him at Salem Speedway get upset with somebody else. It was like, I hope somebody captured that on a photograph for posterity, because you just don't see it happen. Will Terry Labonte pressure him? Of course he will, but he's not going to do it with the front bumper. And look at the run that Raines gets off turn number 10.
The white flag getting ready to wave. One final circuit of the 1.8-mile road course here at Heartland Park, Topeka. And Tony Raines might have been doing what we used to call in bicycle racing, giving him the old razor there, showing him not quite all the acceleration that he had, because this time he really poured on the coals coming out of turn number 10 and opened a huge gap compared to what he had been able to do before. Now Labonte's really got to work hard to try to close up nearly 2 full car lengths on Tony Raines, who is a half lap from winning his first ASA race in a long time.
It's been 3 years since Tony Raines has taken a checkered flag. If desire is the criterion by which this victory is awarded, Labonte will finish in second position. Nobody wants a victory any more than Tony Raines does right now. Glenn Allen Jr. has separated himself from Brian Revner. These two will duke it out, and all that Allen can do is hope one of the two in front of him makes a mistake. It was supposed to be a Ford racetrack. It's a Pontiac, a Chevrolet, and a Pontiac running 1, 2, 3. Then it's Refner and car number 17, Darrell Waltrip.
Here's the final turn, number 10. This is where Tony Raines has owned the field for the last however many laps since he has led it. Tony Raines can just about shut the car off now and still get across the finish line. He does, to take the victory here at Heartland Park, Topeka. The Mello Yello 300 champion for 1995, young Tony Raines in the Baker Enterprises Cleanburn Pontiac. And Howie Leddow, the crew chief, has yet another victory on a road course here. The chassis master has shown his domination once again.
Well, I have a feeling we may see a little rise in the emotional level of Tony Raines when he makes it back here to the victory lane area. A big bottle full of Mello Yello awaits the victory, and it's going to be Tony Raines getting it done here this afternoon.
We might even see a little bit of emotion out of Howie Leddow, and wouldn't that be a sight to see? We'll be back here in just a few minutes for the celebration at Heartland Park, Topeka. Join us, won't you? We're back to the Mello Yellow 300 here. This is the unofficial results down through the top 10. Of course, the winner, Tony Raines. And we're going to go quickly down to the winner, and Ralph Shaheen.
Boy, way to go, Tony Raines. You beat him. You got to win, and you beat one of the best road racers in the business. You got to feel great.
I can't tell you how good I feel. This is really great for the team, the guys, our sponsors, Pontiac, you know, Mello Yellow. I like this track, and the heat was tough, but we had a good car, and I'm really happy. Really.
Tony Raines and Howie Ledow get a road course win at Heartland Park.
Well, a little bit of the emotion that'll no doubt increase as it begins to sink in that Tony Raines has won a road race, that he has won his first ASA event in better than 3 years, and that he has won that event over Terry Labonte, one of the finest road racers in any form of stock car racing. Rob Albright, we can only say that, well, once again, we have enjoyed a great show here at the AC-Delco Challenge Series.
And great run for Glenn Allen Jr., a strong ride for Butch Miller backing up Scott Hansen will keep him strong in the points. Brian Refner finishes 4th. He's going to be the new